Welcome back to a special live London Marathon edition of the FloTrack podcast. I'm Kevin Sully in my usual spot here in Austin, Texas, but joining me across the globe, Cathal Dennehy, track and field marathon journalist. He hails from Ireland, but he's joining us from Greece. Cathal, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I said I'd have to go to the home of the marathon for the London Marathon broadcast, just embed myself in the culture of the whole 26.2 mile journey, run the original route that Pheidippides ran, whatever it was, a few thousand years ago. But no, basically I'm at a random villa in the Greek countryside, but the Wi-Fi seems to be working well enough. So yeah, looking forward to a great race today.
That's awesome. We appreciate the dedication. Gordon couldn't give us that sort of commitment. He is not at the home of the marathon, so we gave him the hook, put Cathal in. This is going
Sack
to be a
him.
great morning.
Sack him. Yeah.
He has been sacked. So this is the watch party. Want to let people know what they'll see here on this feed. You'll be able to watch Cathal and mine's reaction in real time to the race. We'll be putting up splits, so on and so forth. If you want to watch the actual race, this is the second screen. So if you want to watch the full race in the US, in Canada, or in Australia, there's a link in the YouTube feed for a FloTrack broadcast of the live race. As I said, we'll just be doing commentary on this screen. If you're joining us right now live on YouTube, comment in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. Is anybody already awake in the United States like me? Did anybody sleep last night in the United States? Is anybody in the middle of a REM cycle and should probably still be asleep in the United States? Cathal, just big picture, what are you most excited about? What are you most interested in seeing here today in London?
It's two very different races, I think. Like in one race, you have a clear standout favorite in Bridget Kosgei, but then there's the doubts around her in Tokyo. Coming back 8 weeks is not much of a turnaround. There's a few lingering rumors as well about maybe she's carrying an injury or something, but we're not too sure on that. I guess we'll find out in the next 2 hours. And I think the whole women's race revolves around what kind of shape is Bridget Kosgei in just 8 weeks after winning that Olympic silver. And then, I mean, the strength behind her is just ridiculous. It's probably the greatest women's field ever assembled. The amount of like 218, 219, 217 runners that are in there. If she's not 100%, she won't win this, or at least 98%. And in the men's race, I have absolutely no idea who's going to win it. And I think that's the first time in a long time I've said that in London, in a race that has for so long revolved around Eliud Kipchoge. And even before that, people like Samuel Wanjiru, Martin Lell, there was always kind of, in my mind anyway, a standout favourite in London. And this year I look at the field and I don't have a clue who's going to win. I think it's going to come down to Ethiopia versus Kenya. No great surprises there. But Berhanu Legacy, I think, and Titus Ikiru look the two best athletes on paper in the field. I think they will or should lead the respective charges for the East African distance running titans. But again, I just have no idea how that men's race is going to go. I don't think we're going to see too many fast times today, but I think there's beauty in that as well, even if it's a 203, only a 203 in the men's, or a 217 or something in the women's. I think we'll get two very competitive races, which will be refreshing. How about you? What are you most looking forward to?
I think you hit the nail right on the head in terms of the women's race. I mean, we have crazy depth there, but it does revolve around just how prepped is Kosgei, how recovered is she from the Olympics. You could say that about a lot of the top names, other than Jocelyn Jepkosgei. All the big names ran in Tokyo, and we forget because we're just so happy to have major marathons back. This fall is unprecedented. It's like marathon after marathon after marathon. We have a lot of people coming back after Tokyo. That's not the norm. The men's side, yeah, the depth, right? So we've never had more than 4 men sub 204 in one race. I was thinking that could be possible today. You seem to think it's not going to be as quick. Is that weather related? Is that you think there's an effect from what happened in Berlin last week, where we saw the slowest Berlin marathon we've seen in a while? Why do you think it's going to be slower?
I don't know. I guess I was probably thinking mainly of the women's in terms of Bridget Kosgei's 214, which kind of just realigned what everyone thought of as fast in the last 2 years. And I think so many of the leading women are coming back off Tokyo, and I just don't think it's possible. Not that I've ever run a marathon, so I can't speak with any expertise on this, but like at the elite level, when you follow it, I guess, closely enough, generally they need that 12 or 16 week build up. And I think for a lot of people, this in that women's race, it's probably harsh to say a payday, but it's an afterthought, I would say, almost the London Marathon. Like, they trained for Tokyo. For some, they won
Right.
medals. For some, they dropped out. And then it was like, okay, take a week off and get back running. And they're kind of coming into this off a 6-week prep rather than a 12 or 16-week prep. And I think that's just going to have a lot of them 2 or 3 or 4% off their usual base level, I guess, or their peak level. And in the men's race, there's obviously a lot. There's a few coming back from Tokyo, but I think that will probably relatively maybe be a stronger race. I think we might see a 2:02, but I think obviously they're going out at 61:20 at halfway. So what's that, 2:02:40? My genius math here.
Yeah.
But I think they're, so I think it's the classic thing of get rich or die trying. I think like everyone will go with that, but I think only one, maybe two will hang on to break 2:03. And it's so harsh to say that like just under 2:03 isn't that fast anymore. But I guess given what Kipchoge and Kenny Bekele did, they've spoiled it for everyone else when they do run 2:03. We're like, meh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think today's more about the depth. I mean, there's obviously a possibility where one person shows up and really asserts themselves, but when you look at that men's field as a whole, Shura Kitade, you have the reigning champion, you have Berhanu Legesse who won in Tokyo, but none of them have like, and a lot of, you have the number 3 all time in terms of time, the number 4 in terms of time. You have someone like Titus Akira who just won Milan in May, but you have a lot of people where this win would be by far the biggest win of their career because maybe they've had a fast time, but they don't have the victory over the top-notch field that they would get today. So I think it's just a matter of, hey, maybe someone can pop out of the crowd because you're right. Right now, you could run a 2:03:15, and we read it on the internet, and we're like, okay, join the club. You're on a long list of people who could do that, right?
Poor Titus Akiru. He ran 2:02:57 in Milan in May, and everyone and he ran he went 61:48 for the first half and 61:09 second half, which is just
Mhm.
bonkers. And everyone just the whole running world just went, 2:02:57.
Yeah,
Like, that was the fastest time ever. What, 5-6 years ago? For even
sure.
within the last three years, that was still the world record before Kipchoge and Bekele went a lot quicker. Like, but yeah, what's he, fourth fastest man or something, or of all
Yeah.
time? And just he's if you lined him up at a major marathon and said, who is Titus Akiro, I think even a lot of running fans would be like, I don't know who that guy is.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people today hopefully will get to see him and get to know him because he's going to be right up the front. I would say, like, he's due. He's too good an athlete not to win a marathon major at some point, but
Mhm.
he's only run one before, which was to Tokyo, and he dropped out. So, yeah, I think this is only his second major, but he should be right up there.
Well, and because he had a more traditional buildup, like you mentioned before, the fact that he ran in May, I think he's an appealing pick for a lot of people because he didn't have to worry about rearranging his schedule. And yeah, he's run some races that would not lead you to believe he's a favorite, but he's coming off the best one of his life, and he's had that proper buildup over the summer. I wanted to talk about those paces you mentioned. Them, we got word of the pacing targets for both the men and the women yesterday, and the journalist Alberto Strietti tweeted them out on the women. We'll throw those up there when we have a chance. But on the women's side, this is kind of interesting to me. Cathal, let me know what you think about this. We have a 2:17 flat pace, 18 flat pace, and then the next group. If you don't want to get group 1 or group 2, those are a little too rich for your blood. Well, you got to wait all the way to 2:24 because that's the next tier down here. What did you think when you saw these women's paces?
I know, I saw it and I was like, oh, I mean, they're just going to go together, aren't they? Really, probably.
Right.
Yeah,
Why
it's
wouldn't
so
you?
strange. It's like, yeah, it's like, who, if you're good enough to run 2:19, you're good enough to obviously challenge for a podium position in London. And if you're running a 2:19 pace through the first miles and you see 7 or 8 women ahead of you, the ones who are going to go for all the big money here in London, like just up the road, you're going to be like, ah, screw it, I'm running with them. So I don't know who's exactly going to go with the 2:18 pace and not the 2:17 pace. Um, so yeah, I don't really understand the thinking. I can only assume that one of the leading managers or agents has requested it, or the athletes themselves. Perhaps if they've just said, I'm not ready for a 2:17. But I don't know. It is obviously Ethiopians and Kenyans who will be completely dominating the front of the race, and they kind of both have a tradition of just going until they drop for the win. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see who's going to be the kind of, I suppose, the tactical one to just lay off the pace. But like, I suppose we do have a lot of athletes like in and around the 219, 220 mark, and I guess maybe for some of them, going at 217 pace they know would be suicide, so they just say, right, let's go out at 218 pace, because obviously there's a big demand, it seems, here for
Yeah.
218 pace, but not 217 pace.
I'm going to be keeping close eye on this throughout the race, Castle. It's going to be one of my hobby horses. Like, is there a dividing line? Can we see? I kind of wish this was like one of those mass race marathons where they actually hold the sign with the pace, because I just want to make sure in those early miles that the 218 person, the whole person holding the 218 stick, is in fact what would you need to be? Just like 2 seconds behind basically every single mile. So I just want them
Yeah,
right.
two
You couldn't
seconds
even fit the amount of women who are going to want to run that pace in the physical space, probably between 217 and 218.
I
That's how
know.
crowded I
How
think it's going to be.
How tragic would that be? Like, just, you start off in the same line with someone, but you give up 2 seconds a mile. And obviously that's how the marathon works. But like when it's
Yeah,
literally, there's only whatever, 20 of you in the whole race, and you're just looking at them going 2 seconds further. That's like what, less, it's 15 meters or something like. So you're just like,
right.
oh, now they're 15 meters ahead. 2 miles, they're 30 meters ahead. 3 miles, they're 45 meters ahead. It would be the most tragic way to run a race. Then you're like, oh, maybe I'll see them later. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I think that 218 group, I think, is going to go for it. That's my prediction. I hope anyway. But yeah, the men's race 10 is very different pacing.
Yeah, yeah. So on the men's, well, before we switch over to the men's, real quick, the see, Kosgei, Salpeter, Dereje, Debaba, Jepkosgei, all sub 219. If you're trying to find a dividing line, but you don't know what type of shape people are in, and then you have Jameli, Azamira, Ymir, Germa are all sub 220. So in a way, in terms of the sheer amount of them, it does kind of split down 50-50. But on the men's side of things, we'll throw up the men's paces on there. And if you're just joining us in the chat, let us know where you're watching from. We have someone tuned in from Vancouver, so they definitely did not go to sleep. I think they stayed up. Cathal, they're just past midnight over there, and then we got people watching from Kenya as well too. So they're on a better time zone like you are. We're got the women's race here coming up at the bottom of the hour. But let's go to these men's paces now, if we could. And that top pace group, 61:20. So that'd be 202:40. 202:40 for the men in that top group. Now they have a little bit more significant of a drop off between 1 and 2. Group 2, 65, so 210. So you figure that's the Brits. That's someone like Tristan Woodfin of Canada, who said he's going for the Canadian record of 209. You think they'd be in that group? So we're going to jam pack a lot of people into Group 1 there, Cathal, where they have 3 pacers on tap for 202:40.
Yeah, I think everyone's really going with that, aren't they? And obviously, 202:40 is a time no one has run. Berhanu Legacy is the closest, 202:48, and we've two other men below 3 hour or below 203, Titus Akiru and Mozanet Geramun, and Evans Chibet's at 203 flat as well. So you would have to imagine if one of them is ready in and around that 202:40 will be perhaps doable. Obviously, a big payday awaits if anyone breaks Eliud Kipchoge's course record as well. But
Yeah.
not going to be an easy task, I'd say. But it looks cloudy in London, and it looks like pretty good marathon weather to me from that early shots that are coming up.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to your expertise, seeing as how you live in that part of the world. Give us the overall vibe of London in the fall.
I guess it's, how would you describe London in the fall? Very changeable. I mean, I remember going over to the London Marathon in 2018 it was, and I'm pretty sure that was, yeah, it was the hottest London Marathon on record. It was 25 degrees Celsius. What is that in Fahrenheit? I think it's in around the 70s, I think, if I terrible conversions are right. But
77.
it was 27. Yeah, and that was, or yeah,
77.
that was just brutal. I mean, especially because it was sunny. I had some friends who ran Berlin last week, and it was about 21 Celsius, so probably in around the 70 mark, and towards the latter half of the race. And my friend who ran it, he was planning to run 225. He died an absolute death, ran 234, and he just said the killer was the sun. In terms of temperature would be okay without the sun. But yeah,
Yeah.
once the sun was high in the sky and the humidity, it just killed them. I think generally that's pretty good. London, I mean, we've had races in London that were like, close to freezing at 5 degrees Celsius. And this year seems to be right in the middle. It's kind of like 17, 16 degrees Celsius at start time, which seems, I think it seems pretty good conditions today. If it's not too windy, hopefully. But I guess we'll soon find out. And as we saw with Berlin, everyone kind of thought, oh yeah, 61 minutes at halfway, no big deal. And then again, just because it was a few degrees too warm and the sun was high in the sky, pretty much everyone in that race last week or 2 weeks ago, or yeah, it was last Sunday, wasn't it? Absolutely
Yeah.
died in the last half of Berlin. So I think today we probably won't see as many blow-ups because it is a bit cooler and it doesn't look as sunny. So hopefully for the athletes it stays that way. Because I remember looking up before, talking to a manager about the optimal temperature, and it was surprisingly cold. I think it was
Yeah.
like, in terms of Celsius, I think it's like 9 or 10 degrees Celsius. It's actually like, as the manager said to me before of some world-class marathoners, you should be freezing cold in the start line, basically, for ideal temperatures for running a fast marathon. And if you're comfortable on the start line, it means you're probably going to be overheated the last 10 miles.
Yeah, I remember one interesting thing to come out of all those sub 2 attempts for Kipchoge is you really learned the optimal conditions in terms of weather, a number of factors as well. Turns out if you're running with 70 pacemakers and a car with a giant clock, that helps you too. But temperature wise, right? They were always tinkering with the temperature, and yeah, like you, is like, oh yeah, it's you want it to be chilly at the start, right? You don't want it to be warm at already when you from the get go. It says 52 degrees right now, according to Google, in London with some clouds there.
Perfect.
But yeah, it looks pretty good. I think. Listen, I think the main lesson from Berlin was just like you can't go out sub 61 and expect to survive unless your name is Eliud Kipchoge. Like I know we've watched him
Yeah.
enough to start thinking that it's like going out in your backyard after Michael Jordan hits a game-winning shot, and you create that scenario over and over again in your head. Except this is far more risky because you do it and you still have 13.1 more miles to run. I think we're seeing like the limitations here on folks. Yes, they can run fast, but man, you're going to be in for a world of hurt if you fly a little too
Yeah.
close to the sun.
I think, yeah, Kipchoge really fooled everyone with the whole no human is limited stuff. And I think everyone started to believe that. And then in Berlin last week, we found out pretty quickly some humans are actually limited. And I mean, even Kipchoge himself was never crazy enough to go out like sub 61. Yeah, that was lunacy. And I remember I was talking to someone on Twitter because I said something about bad pacemaking in Berlin, which I thought it was because they missed the target by they were on 61 pace and then they just sped up in the last, right
Yeah.
before halfway, and I was like, "What are they doing?" And you could see it was craziness because obviously there was no Kipchoge in there, and even when Bekele is sitting off the pace and went through in 61, and then you the pacemakers going 60
Yeah.
48, it was just like, "Oh, this is going to go horribly wrong, probably, or someone's going to break the world record." But of course, it went horribly wrong.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's lunacy, and I mean, I think it's pretty much established now that negative split is the way to go, even if only minor, even at the very top level down to like the 3 or 4 or 5 hour marathoners. There really is,
Mm.
that whole idea of banking time or something is just, it seems to always backfire in the marathon. So I don't know. I think especially with the shoes, I think, in the age of super shoes, I think I don't know, I guess relying on them to help you out with a negative split is kind of perhaps the best way to go. And hopefully someone will do that today.
Yeah, the shoes combined with the Kipchoge quote, "No human is limited," as you mentioned, just get people jacked up. Maybe that was strategic on Iliad's part. Maybe he's just like, listen, I want some
Yeah. And
people taking some unnecessary risks, so I'm going to become this motivational figure, so that way people think that they can actually run that quickly.
I know, yeah. He just probably said, "I'm going to kick back for the fall marathon season and watch all of you ruin your lives and ruin your careers by trying to run 201 like me when you're clearly not ready to run 201."
Good luck. Yeah,
Yeah,
well, now with the shoes, we have a hard and fast line in terms of regulation, right? In terms of the height. So obviously, it took a little bit of time over the past couple of years. The pandemic changed that as well too, because the racing opportunities weren't the same. But you'd think at a certain point we'd even out here, and then you'd get a norming effect in terms of the times. Not to say that they're going to be stuck at these marks forever, but just the huge drops and that we've seen over the past couple years, now that we have a hard and fast regulation on the shoe, I think are going to start to taper off. Do you see it the same way?
I think so. Yeah, I don't. I mean, what sort of crazier designs can they come up with? Given they have that 40 millimeter limit, I guess, on stack heights.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I don't know. These engineers are very smart people. From the days of Flubber in that movie in the 90s to it basically is the same thing replicated in the marathon in recent years with that hyper responsive foams they're all creating. So you just know someone is in a shoe design or technology meeting at the moment, just coming up with something crazy in the next couple of years, even within those limits. And I suppose the thing about those limits are, as well as that, they're not going to be static. They're probably going to be, they might be reset again. And I think on the track, they're still trying to grapple exactly with what the heck they're going to do for the future in terms of set rules, I guess, on events. In terms of, I think everything that's in place at the moment is kind of just a short-term fix, and they're kind of studying what's right for the
yeah,
sport. And God, it's a good way to start arguments, isn't it? To to bring up the
yeah,
topic. And what do you think about what's fair in terms of super shoes?
yeah. Well, it seems to me they've come up with a number that's at least consistent across the board, and they can still build shoes that are bigger. We saw the gentleman in the Vienna marathon run with shoes that were above the stack height, and he ended up getting disqualified. Those now he ran, what did he run? 208, 209. So it wasn't necessarily the best advertisement for them being faster. So you can still have those shoes available to the mass public, but I guess you're right. We'll see for this era, they're going to keep probably tinkering with it. But in terms of stack height, though, there is you're approaching the optimal height, you'd think, because people are talking about, well, then you just get really crazy weight, right? If you go any taller. I remember Jared Ward was talking about this back in the Olympic trials. And then you get, even if you get really high, just your balance starts to get impacted, right? Going around curves. It's like you're running these massive, massive platforms. It makes it tough to corner. So you're right. Maybe there's something besides the height where
Yeah.
innovation exists. Although, did we really? I don't know. Maybe you were more in tune to this. Did we really even talk about shoes before this? Like for the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years? It
No.
like Kipchoge's soles came out, and that was the main shoe talking point, right? That was it.
I know. I remember the Adidas Boost when they came out. They did make the claim, kind of like Nike, about 4%. They had the 2% claim, I think, for running economy benefit,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that kind of went around. But I think everyone kind of just listened to it and went, nah, because I think we didn't see that seismic shift that we saw when the
yeah,
Vaporfly came out. So yeah, obviously Dennis Kimetto and I think Haile Gebrselassie, they were kind of wearing that technology when they broke the marathon world records. But I guess it wasn't as game changing, so people just ignored it. And I think now, I mean, we've all talked about nothing but shoes for the last 4 years, but I think now that they're kind of normalized and even ish across the board, I think it's good. We're kind of starting to move on from the shoe talk and kind
yeah.
of back towards the race itself. But it's funny you mentioned about the optimal height because I was talking to an Olympic medalist there. It was his name is, yeah, Bashir Abdi. I was actually up in
Hmm.
the mountains of France with a fellow friend of mine who's a coach last week, and he was up there training. We got talking about the shoes, and he was just saying how we were asking about the Alpha Fly because he ran in the next percent in Tokyo, and he
Hmm.
always ran the next percent. And we were saying, like, did you try the Alpha Fly? And he said, yeah, they brought us out to them, but he was like, I didn't like them. They were too big. He was like, and they were
Hmm.
too, when your foot hits the ground, your foot compresses and then comes out. And he's like, it also makes you really unbalanced. So he was like, it was kind of a shoe that was, originally obviously built for Kipchoge and for the Vienna
Hmm.
159 attempt,
Right.
and then obviously marketed to the masses after that. But he was like, and I think you do see, even when you look at it now, if you look at the start line, half marathon and marathon, I think you see in terms of Nike, you definitely see more next percent than Alpha Fly these days. And I think
Hmm.
for a lot of people, the Alpha Fly tipped the balance to being like too chunky, and they
Hmm.
preferred a sort of more reasonable thing. And I think across the board, even though there is that 40 millimeter limit, I think most of the shoe brands still seem to be building around the mid 30s rather than that huge pillow on your foot.
Yeah. Well, and we're at the point now where, yeah, a 0.5% increase obviously makes a big difference in terms of economy, but it wouldn't be one that we would really notice. So a shoe designer, engineer, they could work their entire life to get the 0.5% or the 1% increase, and we're just gonna be like, it's a better day. It wasn't too windy. That's why they got the PR.
Yeah,
Like now you have to
he believed in
you're
himself.
yes, yeah, exactly. You're compared now to someone who or a group of people who made that 4% jump, right? So you could still have this great crowning achievement in your career, but it's got to be massive if we're going to pay attention. So the wheelchair race is underway. Women's race is going to get going here soon. We got 12 degrees Celsius. The broadcast is reporting at the start. So 53.6 degrees according to my Google Translator. Again, this is going to be the watch party here. There's a link if you want to watch the full race live. If you're in the U.S., Canada, or Australia, we're going to be discussing all the mile splits and everything as they go on. But 53 degrees at the start, Cathal. This is close to perfect. I mean, we'll see how it holds up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of as well, the fact the sun is not out looks great, and just looking at some of the trees as well, there doesn't seem to be many too much wind blowing, I guess. And
Mhm.
yeah, we've got pretty much perfect temperatures. I mean, London is not the fastest course. It's a tick down maybe from like the likes of Valencia and obviously Berlin and things like that. And I'd say it's probably similar to Chicago, but I mean, we've obviously seen world records here in the past, Paula Radcliffe and so many other crazy times. Like so, yeah, I think we obviously won't see a world record in either race today, but I think we will probably see something very fast. Like we said, we have just too much quality in both races. I mean, we've 8, 9, 10 just ridiculously good athletes in both the men's and women's races. So, I mean, 7 or 8 of them are going to die and blow up the last few miles, but I
Mhm.
think the 1 or 2 that survive at the front in each race are gonna run very quick. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe 1 or 2 men, 202, and probably a 217, maybe 1 216 for a woman.
Mhm.
What about you? What's your prediction, time wise?
Yeah, the women I think have the potential to go that fast, but Kosgei did this really fantastic job in the press conference of managing expectations because they asked, "Hey, are you going to go after the course record, which is also the women's only race world record?" Mary Keitany, recently retired Mary Keitany, 2:17:01, and she seemed to imply strongly like that wasn't the target. She wasn't going for that. She also said she only took 2 days off after the Olympics. You're like, okay, you're in perfect shape, but it's hard to tell. Men, I for me, it kind of feels like the men's all or nothing. And what I mean by that is like I feel like the pace is going to go to 30K or it's not. Like it's going to be paced well or it's not. And if it is, I think we are going to see multiple uh 203s, maybe no 202s, but multiple 203s, or it's going to be a situation where the pacing and just the day doesn't unfold properly and then we're going to get like a maybe 1 203 high or something like that and then there's a big gap. It's tough though, right? It's tough to forecast these things because I'm thinking about London marathons past and it just all these crazy lead changes in the last 10K, favorites going down. Like even though it is a pace race, even though there is this history of such excellent performances, like we forget sometimes like, oh, they were the favorite that year. That person was like in contention and then they fell apart. Like there's still all sorts of stuff that can go wrong in the back half of this race.
I know, and I think Kipchoge sort of changed that for everyone, didn't he? I mean, what he did was just ridiculous. His consistency. He kind
Mhm.
of made us all forget that the marathon sort of messes you up. I remember talking to Jos Herman. A friend of mine was talking to Jos Hermans years ago before Bekele actually moved to the marathon, and he gave this
Mhm.
great interview where he just said, "Oh, the marathon, it f's you up," and we kept replaying that. We used to have a podcast, and
Yeah.
he was kind of talking about why Bekele was hesitant to move to the marathon because he thought, he would leave behind any ability to compete on the track if he did. And I think recent years and super shoes and the way people are recovering and all that, and just the brilliance of Kipchoge and like obviously Bridget Kosgei between 2018,
Mhm.
how much the marathon screws with your body, like in so many different ways. And obviously, if you add in some weather, you can have a dark, dark day out on the roads. And we saw that in Berlin. And who knows, we might see it again today. But I think it's almost Berlin to me was like a throwback to a previous era before super shoes, where it was like, oh wait, people are actually vulnerable and people actually fall
Yeah.
apart again in the last 5 miles, which was refreshing to see, I think, because I kind of forgotten that after a while with Kipchoge and Koskai doing what they were doing in recent years.
Well, I think also the shoes get all the attention, and for good, good reason. They're literally this bright, shiny object that's flashing in front of you on the screen. But I think it also was an era of really good pacing, because I think Kipchoge's attempts kind of demonstrated how to properly set up the race. Not that it was never known before, but just the way that people positioned themselves within the pack. And a lot of these, races, it felt like with the increasing depth, there was more people available to pace. So I think that, like, you can't take that for granted. We see it on the track all the time. Amit has great pacemakers. You have a million PRs. Amit doesn't have great pacemakers, and you have a lot of people doing like great splits halfway and then completely falling apart. Like they hold the keys to success.
Definitely, yeah. We've got some very good pacemakers. I mean, London always shells out the cash for the top level pacemakers as well. I know Bernard Ngano is one of the men's pacemakers for 6120.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just crazy, isn't it, to think
Yeah.
6120 at halfway and you have to do it on your own. I mean, there's not many men in the world who you can get to run 6120, and obviously in Berlin they needed 61 flat, and they have to looking at their GPS watch and run that on their own. It's just and keep the splits perfectly even and kind of check where everyone is. That is some tasks. You do have to be world class in yourself. And just looking at the women's race here, the three pacemakers are just out on their own, about 20 yards in front of everyone, and to be honest, serving absolutely no purpose at the moment because no one in the pack is showing much interest. I think there's a lot of Tokyo fatigue, perhaps, in that pack, and they're maybe it's only going to be a 218 pace, as opposed to what we predicted a while ago, Kevin.
Well, it's funny, the 218 pacers are pacing themselves off of the runners in the 217 group, who themselves are not following the 217 pacers. We have a real domino effect going on here.
I know, yeah, it's controversial, but I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's just seeing back the field there. There's some of the other kind of the 220. What would they be? They're the 224 group there, following Eilish McColgan, whose mother Liz started the race there. Two legends of British athletics. It's funny that little competition between Liz and Eilish McColgan in terms of trying to break, your Scottish records and your personal bests. And I mean, whoever says, talent isn't a thing, you clearly just ignore the fact that, Eilish is basically the exact same level of runner that her mother Liz was. Genetics do have an awfully big role to play in this sport. And yeah, we also see Sinead Diver as an Irishman, of course, I'm extremely proud of, even though she runs for Australia now, the first born and raised in the west of Ireland was Sinead Diver, and one of the best stories I would say in probably in the sport, not just in marathoning, because for anyone, I'm sure anyone who's tuned into marathons before knows the story of Sinead Diver, but 44 years old now, grew up in Ireland in a very conservative kind of small village in the west of Ireland, where she went to a very religious school where the nuns who ran the school discouraged her from doing any sport. It was only when she went to college she got into sport and hated running. And then she moved to Australia in her early mid 20s, spent about 10 years there, married, had two kids, never did running. And then her sister brought her down to basically go for a run and to try this loop called the Tan in Melbourne. I think it's about 3K. And she did a really good time off no training at the age of 33, I think it was, or 32. So she only came to running at 32, 33. A couple of years later, she ran her first marathon. I think she ran 2:30, what was it, 2:33 or something. Qualified for the world
Mhm.
champs. Tried to run for Ireland, and then when she tried to run for Ireland, she was 36. The Irish Federation changed the standard after she expressed her interest, even though she qualified, and made the qualifying standard 30 seconds faster than she. And then she
What?
was 36. That was the world champs in Beijing. And she said, I'm 36. When am I going to get back to a world championships? So she had dual
Right.
nationality and ran for Australia, thinking this might be my only chance. And then it turned out that she would have been one of the best things ever to happen to Irish distance running, because she just finished 10th in the Olympic marathon. And yeah, it's a
Oof.
crazy story, and it says a lot about how things are done in Ireland,
Yeah,
that we turned
that's what
our
I was gonna
nose
say.
up at this 36, 37-year-old because we probably went 233. She'll never amount to anything. And now I think she finished fifth, maybe in New York a couple of years ago, and sixth in London. She's consistent list of 10 best marathoners at the biggest marathons in the world. And she's just a great story. And I think proof that, you don't have to be an exceptional athlete in your teens and 20s. Although she does say, she does look back and wonder, how good could I have been if I was a runner in my 20s? Because obviously she's very, very good in her 40s.
Yeah. So the bumping the standard up by 30 seconds, was that just because they didn't want to send anybody? Was or was there
Yeah.
somebody else was there somebody else in that 30-second gap that they wanted to send
There was
instead?
no one else. There was no one else. But the in Ireland, the high performance director at the time had, he's actually American, and he had a performance funnel that everyone in Ireland used to just shake their heads at. And basically, if you weren't like, for say the 1500 meters, it was a performance funnel. So to run this time
Yeah.
by the age of say 26, you had to be running this time by the age of 23. And then if you were a 26-year-old running 3:35, it was totally different to a 22-year-old running 3:35. And he had these for every event. And obviously for the marathon, he took a look at a 2:33 athlete that Sinead was at the time and probably said, you're
Yeah.
36. My performance funnel is already closed for a 36-year-old.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now they would argue, they were just like, oh, we're making the standard where it's more competitive. But the fact that literally no one really knew about Sinead Diver in Ireland at the time when she ran that qualifying standard, and then she literally
Right.
reached out, called the federation and said, oh, just so you know, I'm fully Irish. I feel Irish. I've been living in Australia for the last 15 years, but I want to run for Ireland in the World Championships. And then literally a couple of weeks after that, even though it's like 8 months before the championships, they changed the standard to just below her personal best. And she was like, yeah, it was much like the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. She literally said, I did take that personally.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Sinead Diver, even though she's one of the nicest women you will ever meet and the most polite, kind people, she is also kind of improved in the last few years. But I mean, at the same time, she's a proud Australian as well. And I mean, she's coached by Nick Bideau at the Melbourne Track Club, and everyone in Australia has given her such great support. And I mean, they had her face up on the Sydney Opera House there celebrating their Olympians a few weeks ago, which was a very cool thing to see. So I don't think she's any major regrets really that she isn't wearing the green of Ireland and is wearing the green and gold of Australia instead. But yeah, as an Irishman, I'll be majorly biased on this broadcast and cheering for her today, because fingers crossed she can get into that 2:24 personal best region.
Understood. Understood. I'll never forget federations whose job it seems to be to not send people to compete in major championships. You'd think it would be the opposite. That's why you have the job. Nevertheless, okay, here's what I think we're seeing here, Cathal. I think we're seeing Richard Koskai's pre-race intentions being actualized in that, hey, I'm not running 217 pace. That is not a target of mine. The women's only world record is not for me. So I believe the woman on the left of the pack there is actually the 218 pacer who was helping out actually pace this group. Now, as I say that, she kind of drifts back. So this thing is basically being controlled and run by the lead women. They're getting no benefit at all from the pacers, who you would say, what? I mean, they're at least 40, 50 meters in front. I mean, they're not even in the camera shot.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's kind of like, if you're the Pacers, obviously you're getting paid to do a job. And I mean, we see this all the time, but you would think, I mean, there's got to be someone in that lead truck or whatever, race director, etc., who's just like, okay, look, I know I paid you whatever, several £1,000s to
Change the
hit
plan.
halfway in 68:30, but like, just look around. The women are like
Mm-hmm.
40 yards behind you, just like chill for like 30 seconds, let them catch up, and then let's get slowly back on pace. Because, like, I mean, we always hear Tim Hutchings going on about this, and I love Tim Hutchings and being angry about it on commentaries. He's my favorite commentator, and I think he's so right. Every time I see it, I'm just like, what are you doing? Just get out of the way if you're going to do that, because you're literally pointless at the moment. But I mean, you can see why they do it as well, because they're like, I'm getting my payday and I'm looking at my GPS and this tells me to run 68:30,
Yeah.
and look, you can come or you can not come, but I'm doing it. So yeah, you kind of see why it happens, all right. But yeah, I think they just chill for 30 seconds, back off the pace, let them catch up, and then step on it again. But yeah, it looks like Jocelyn Jepkoska is the one doing most of the work at the moment. And I don't know, like that press conference the other day with Bridget Kosgei, the vibes were not very strong from her. And someone told me that she didn't actually fly on the charter plane from Kenya. Like the London Marathon every year charters a plane that
Mm-hmm.
goes, I think it stops in Kenya and Ethiopia and then flies to London, that picks up the athletes year, which was kind of unusual. And someone said to me she was in Italy, And there is rumors that Bridget Koska is carrying an injury of some sort into this race. Confirmed, we should say, but that is the word on the street from
Mm.
on the ground in London from some people I know who are over there. And I think probably what we're seeing is perhaps that manifesting now 20 minutes into the race, whereby probably every other woman says, right, Bridget, you're the queen of this discipline. You've run 3, 4, 5 minutes faster than everyone else here. It's your job, it's the classic thing of we all defer to you. You're the one who's meant to be in behind the
Yeah.
pacemakers. And if you're not going to go, then we're just going to sit and wait for you, I guess.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, I'm sure a lot of them are carrying things into this race because it was 7 weeks ago when they ran in Sapporo, and that wasn't even. I mean, that was a tough race just with the heat. So recovering from any marathon is difficult, probably more challenging given how bad the conditions there. That's why I was really high on Kipchoge coming in, just because I like the fact it's only her third marathon. She's paced here before. She had the half marathon at the end of August in Europe that she won. She had that more traditional buildup, that more appealing buildup for the field. But yeah, man, those pre-race press conferences are tough to figure out because everybody's in the shape of their life. Everybody's feeling like this is their moment. Like you listen to, and I don't blame the athletes. I don't blame the media members because I've sat in those press conferences too, and I've asked my fair share of questions there where I'm like, what do I expect them to say? I think I was joking with Des Linden one time. I'm like, who do you think is going to be the first athlete at a marathon press conference to say they're in terrible shape and the buildup did not go well at all, and they're going to be lucky to make it to 20 miles?
I I kind of feel like Des might be the one person to actually say
Yeah.
that, If there's an honest athlete out there who would just be like, I mean, I feel like sometimes she goes into races and actually says, yeah, I mean, things went pretty crappy for me on the build up, and
Yeah.
I'm dealing with this and I'm not going to win, but I'm just going to go out there. And as she says, keep showing up and stuff. But when it's amazing that when you do hear an athlete talk as refreshingly honest as that it does stand out because so many, but I mean, I guess, of course, you see why they do it, no one's going to,
Yeah.
one, give their competitors an edge, and two, try and defeat themselves in their heads. And perhaps their
I,
appearance fees might not be as juicy as they are if they
sure.
come in talking a defeated game before they get to the line.
Sure. I would like someone, and they would have to be Kipchoge because he's the only one at that stature, just basically talking down his performance going in and just see the result of the field. Like, because there's no way they would actually believe him. They would think it's some sort of high level Kipchoge mind trick. Like they would still, he could go out in 2:10 pace and they'd be like, hold on, he's got something up his sleeve. Like there's no way he's really
Yeah,
doing this.
Kipchoge does kind of talk. He talks him down a little. He kind of just he's almost afraid to ever talk about his races beforehand. When you see him in the press conference, he just says, "I think it will be a nice day, a special day, and stuff." And you're like,
Mhm.
right, but are you going to break the world record? Or are you going to try? And he's like, I think it will be a nice day. And so it's
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
hard to gauge. Is this guy in the shape of his life, or is he not going to go
Yeah.
well? But yeah, it's interesting. Well, we're seeing Koskei kind of towards the front, I guess, along with Jep
Hmm.
Koskei and Salpeter. So the favorites, the cream is rising, I suppose, but I don't know. Koskei definitely has zero interest in running like a 2:16 here today. She's just after that win, I think, and nothing else.
Yeah.
Understandably.
Yeah. Oh, for good reason. Gore and I talked about this on the pod last night. Her 2:14 just sort of changed how we conceptualize a fast time. Because if you take that out, it's like, man, that was an outlier off of an outlier. Because Radcliffe's time was way out there, but 2:16. We've literally never seen a 2:16. We've seen a 2:14, a 2:15, and then all the way up to a 2:17. So she could run 2 minutes off her PB and be fine. I don't think I've ever seen. I've watched a lot of marathons, Cathal. I don't think I've ever seen a situation where the pacer of the slower group is just chilling in the pack like a regular runner. And this is an
Do you think
interesting
she's trying to
development.
race? Do you think
Maybe
she
she's like,
fancies her chances here and it's just said, screw it. I'm doing my
she
job and
switches
I'm going to
jerseys.
draft on everyone else. Yeah, I'm going to draft on everyone else. And I did my job. What? I ran
Well,
69 minutes or whatever it was.
she's probably looking at that GPS watch, and yeah, I'm hitting my splits. It just so happens that split puts me smack down of the lead. We're
Yeah,
gonna
how
get.
convenient.
Yeah, yes. Lucky me. We're gonna get 5K splits here in a moment, which will be first test for producer Colt, who's in charge with to pulling this off. Colt, if you go to the leaderboard section on there on that link that I sent you, and then you go to elite. You should be starting to refresh. Oh, we do have the women through already. Yeah. Producer Colt doing just amazing work here. He's up at 2:30
Both
a.m.
is on it.
Austin.
I don't
Yeah,
know how you
Austin
guys are
time.
doing it.
Well, I gotta be honest with you, Cathal. I was hallucinating. I was so tired for the first like 15, 20 minutes. I was getting shades of actually the last time I saw you in person, which was in Doha, where I was running on really obscenely small hours of sleep. So I just associate you with just a general fog and mass fatigue, basically.
Well, so do a lot of people. But yeah, I think, in terms of Doha, yeah, I associate Doha with mass fatigue and fog as well. I mean, what was it? Regularly over 100 degrees Fahrenheit into the
Hmm.
into the high 30s and low 40s, and I think we were all suffering that week. It was even though the stadiums was air conditioned and stuff, but when you got to the marathon and stuff, and as an Irishman, I went to the race walks as well out on the roads. Oh,
Mm.
that was torturous. Let's never take a major event back to Doha again, please. Especially not for the road events. Maybe on the in the stadium, but and anything else outside the stadium was absolutely cruel. On journalists mainly. I mean, we felt a little bit of sympathy for the athletes, but I mean, we
Yeah.
were really the ones struggling, Kevin. We didn't have enough t-shirts and laundry to get through in
No,
12
we
days or
didn't.
whatever in Doha.
I was making friends trying to find people who had laundry. Laundry service is very expensive in the hotels there. Okay, so we got the paces, or we got the splits here through 5K. If we can, is that the biggest we can make them? Yes. Okay. So we got 16:21 through 5K. So 2:17:52. So hey, they are right on 2:18 pace. So the 2:18 pacer is doing her job. I don't know if the 2:17 pacers, they haven't showed them at all. I don't know if they've just decided, hey, this is it for me. Like, do I need to keep going or what? But they probably are running their splits there. But we have um, Joan Melly, Jip Koskai, we have Salpeter, Jameli, Bridget Koskai, Rocha Dereje, Azamero, Murugatu, Berhani Dababa, Askiri Bekele are all in that top group. I want to see how just big the number is if I can. We had 12 women there, Cathal. 12 women.
Yeah, it's all the big guns are in here, and it's funny. Just you mentioned Joan Melly there. Joan, I guess Chilimo Melly now. She's been married, and her name has evolved, I guess, in recent years. But it's funny. You read the previews and stuff, and looked at a lot of the of course, being Irish, I'm a gambler as well, and I was looking at the betting for the London Marathon, sizing up the
Mm-hmm.
odds and stuff, and like no one had Joan Melly. She's just in second there in the lead pack in that black Adidas kit with the luminous green shoes, and like this is her marathon debut, and she's run one marathon before. She's run 2:20 in Valencia, but I guess no one really had her in the predictions, even though she's run a 65:09 half marathon this year. And I
Mm-hmm.
think talking to her manager earlier on in the week, he expects her to get a top three finish here. I think she's going to be in and around the top three, so which would be a great performance for Joan Melly. And yeah, an accomplished performer on the track, and is now kind of bringing that talent to the roads. And it's funny, her manager, Michel Bouting, he's also the manager of Emmanuel Mutai. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just like, is she running Joan Melly? And he was like, yeah, she's running. They just left her off the start list. And he was telling me a story about
Mm,
Emmanuel Mutai, who just missed the world record. And when Dennis Cometto ran his, he was
yeah.
second to Dennis Cometto, ran 2:03 low and won London, I think, twice, Emmanuel Mutai. And he said one year Emmanuel ran London and they didn't bring him. They forgot to bring him to the press conference because they were like, I guess he wasn't the biggest name. And he said
Mm-hmm.
he said to Michelle, he's like, "Don't worry, I'll be at the post race press conference, and they won't have a choice then." And he went on and won the London Marathon. And then
Love it.
London had to like bite its own lip and bring
Yeah.
him to the post race press conference as the champion. And I'm sure he reminded them, he was like, "You forgot me at the pre race press
Yeah.
conference, even though I was supposed to be there."
I
But yeah,
like it.
perhaps Joan Melly will channel the spirit of Emmanuel Mutai today and be like, "You all left me out of your previews and left me off your start list. Well, here I am, and I'm gonna. You'll know my name by the end of the day." Channeling that Michael Jordan spirit, and I took that
Again.
personally.
Yeah, yeah. So the women towards the back in the white over red, I think those are the Pacers from 217 that we saw earlier. I know they just flipped off the camera, but it appears that the woman leading the pace is the 218 pacer. Let's see. I'm gonna look at this list again here. Let's see if we can get how many. Because yeah, there was three 217 pacers and one 218 pacer. It almost looked like the woman leading it was the 218 pacer who we saw earlier. and then the the 217 pacers were the ones hanging out in the back. So I don't know. What do you? Yeah, I think we need
I
earpieces for pacers, Cathal. I think that's the innovation that we
yeah,
need, so they can get
we need
real
to.
time information about what to do.
Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, I saw in the Berlin Marathon last week, they were like, there was a guy on a motorbike for the German broadcaster interviewing like pretty decent athletes during the race. Like, I would say probably like men that were running around 220 and stuff. I don't know where they club runs, but I think they were running around with the elite women. There was a guy just on a motorbike interviewing him. And I just thought, okay, whatever about interviewing the guy in the gorilla or the banana costume was running like 4 hours, interviewing a guy who's running 220. Is this a step too far? I know the NBA and all likes their halftime interviews and stuff, which is kind of mid game, but like they're not interviewing people on the
Yeah,
court. But maybe, yeah, the pacemakers, that'd be that's how we need to push our sport forward. Get a live headset on the pacemakers and they can update us from
yeah.
the course about how everyone's looking and what they're talking about out there.
Yeah, you could have the communication between them and the race director, but then they could give their own commentary as well too. I think, hey, you got big budgets. Let's spend some of that money.
Yeah,
That's what I say.
exactly. Exactly. And
On
London, as we
ridiculous
all know, has
things.
the biggest budget of all. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Bring the
Absolutely.
ridiculousness. So yeah, I found the list of pacemakers again in our little segue there. So Irene Jepchumba Kimais, Judith Jeptum, and Betty Wilson Lempus were supposed to hit 68:30, and then it was Segai Gemechu is the sixth. She was the sole woman supposed to run 69. So I
That's
think
her, I
that is
think.
her out front. Yeah. Um. So I don't know where the other three must still be up ahead. I guess on their
I
own,
think
just
they're
having the
I think
chats.
they're in the I think they're in the pack. I think because there's three in with white over red, and I saw them earlier. I think you're seeing them
Okay.
there. I mean, it's hard to tell. I guess we would need to zoom in and see the because didn't we say? Well, actually, I guess we could probably look at the splits, right? Maybe they drop back after 5K. This is the fun thing with the marathon. It's just like you spend the first like 20K figuring out what's going on because some people have dropped out that you don't even know, like they never even started, and then some people drop out in the first 10K. Yeah, so you said Lempus there. So yeah, they don't have her on the live results, but I guess if we counted, we'd
Yeah.
be able to figure that out, right?
Yeah, true. But I think they always leave the Pacers out of the live results, which I don't know
Oh,
is that
okay.
good or
Okay.
bad. It gets quite confusing a lot of times on those leaderboards. You're like, but there's four athletes on my screen, but there's only three in the
Yeah.
live results.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
there's so yeah, she won't. Yeah, that's why Jep Koska is the first athlete through 5K. But yeah, 217 high pace. It's kind of sensible, I would say. It's nothing crazy, and like you can definitely run 216 off, this opening 10K. I guess it's still going to be probably in and around the 32:30 mark, something like that. Um,
Oh,
you
you're
know.
right. They're still out
Oh,
there.
yeah,
Pacers
there
are
they
still out
are.
there. There they are.
I
Chugging
mean,
along.
what what is the point? What are they doing? It's
They're
like
keeping their word.
we learned enough about aerodynamics. Even me and you, Kevin, know a bit about aerodynamics now after Ineos 159 challenge, and I just know that from those wind tunnel testing things they did and all the graphs they had, that there is a big drag effect. And you know what is actually kind of ironic here is that
Yeah.
they're creating a little wormhole, I guess, of drag behind them. And I think it's actually worse that they're there because the wind will come in around them and then bang, hit the lead pack right in the face.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Hey,
I
listen,
think.
they were
Is there
they
any
were
aeronautical
contracted for
experts out there who can help us?
yeah. Yeah. Drop it in the chat if you have an advanced degree in aerodynamics.
Or any degree or any
Yeah.
qualification whatsoever. Even if you
Yes.
read a guide for idiots to aerodynamics, you're going to be better than us.
So but that was an interesting setup because they're running 217. They're doing what they're supposed to. So I just think we got to give more credit to the 218 pacer because she's carrying the whole race on her shoulders now. She's got everybody behind
Yeah.
her, and there's only one of her. There's not three.
Do you reckon she's going to ask for a raise at the end of the day? Been like,
Yeah,
look, I know I was running slower, but who was more valuable to the race here? These three women out front who are just running on their own, or me who's like towing everyone along. But I don't know. Maybe you would think maybe that the 218 pacer or the 219 pacer there at the front has been told just like start to tow them back, but it doesn't really
yeah.
seem to be happening. You would think that would have happened in the last 10 minutes if it was going to happen. So yeah, I've no idea why someone in those lead pack or lead motorbike doesn't have a word with those pacemakers and just go, turn around, please turn around and see what's happening,
Yeah.
because you could be of huge benefit to all the women behind you, but you're currently being of absolutely no benefit. And
Hey,
they're already halfway through their job, I guess.
you're a man of strong business acumen. You ask for a raise at the moment of highest leverage. So you don't ask for a raise after it's over. She needs to ask for a raise right now. She say, "Hey, do you want me to get them through
This
to
is
15K?"
I like your thinking, Kevin.
Yeah, get
Americans
the
are
agent
always
on the
good at the
phone.
capitalism, you know? Yeah, someone needs to say, look, I'm out of here. You be stuck with
You
those
just
three up here unless you double my fee.
put her hands up like this, start going like this. I'm not gonna keep going unless you tell me. Um, but like the rabbits are, they're important now, but where they're really important is 20 to 30K. So maybe one of those women who's doing 217 pace is gonna help out later on. But the problem with how they're positioned, they're running like three abreast. They're not even helping each other out that much, really. So they're not keeping one of them fresh for use later on either.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes absolutely no sense. I don't know. And I think even if you run, someone told me before, again, this is not a proven fact. It may be entirely fake, but someone said if you run side by side with someone, it actually increases the drag on them because the wind, I guess, vortex or whatever is like
On
widened
each
that
other?
you have to break. Yeah, I think so. If you run
Oh
shoulder to
wow.
shoulder to someone, you both have to break more drag than you would if you were running on your own. But again, anyone with even the most basic qualification in aerodynamics, please tell us if we're talking absolute nonsense, because we may be. But yeah, it's an interesting way. So someone was talking about how if you want to like beat Mo Farah, say three Ethiopians trying to beat Mo Farah, you should get one guy up running beside him, just annoy him, and
Oh,
then have one guy drafting behind who's benefiting from the double drag, if you get me, which obviously is
okay.
a benefit to anyone behind. But yeah, I agree. One of those pacemakers, the strongest pacemaker of those three, should be sitting in third right now, just chilling to actually be of use come 25, 30K. It's
Yeah. So
men's.
the where my feet. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get Kevin here on the refresh, but the men are on the start line. Vincent Kipchumba, who was second last year, 31 years
Mhm.
old. The Adidas kit, I would have to say, is a little bit questionable this year. It's dividing opinion, Kevin. The Adidas kit.
Oh,
They've
oh,
the
is it
leopard the
controversial?
leopard print design. Well, it's that kind of leopard print design thing they've got going on. I don't know. It's edgy. I'm
Edgy.
not sure if it
Yeah.
works or not. Yeah.
What do you think of speaking of uniforms? What do you think of the Pacer jerseys?
I think they're cool. I still enjoyed the old school ones, the David Bedford, was it Shaftesbury Barnet Harriers that he ran for, obviously the long-time race director in London, a
Hmm.
nod to his club it used to be, but they've changed them up this year and I'm not sure why. Because I kind of liked, and I noticed that Berlin stole the kind of color scheme of the what the London used to do for their pacemakers, which was interesting to see. I wonder if they copyrighted it
I
in London. But yeah, London has since evolved with a edgier design. It's quite cool.
Yeah, I like it because you're talking about the black and white stripe ones, basically that Berlin and
Mhm.
London did before, which in our U.S. residents will be familiar with. They look like referees' jerseys or Foot Locker employees. They all were dressed like referees for. I don't know why they did that. Now that I think about it, but I spent a lot of time in my youth looking for Jordans in Foot Lockers with people dressed in black and white stripes helping me. But I like these. They got the little bit of red there. I think they're sharp. I think these are the best Pacer jerseys I've ever seen. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. Now, the pacing itself, we'll see how good it is, but the jerseys, sharp.
Yeah, we've got one staring woman and three kind of not so useful pacemakers at the moment. So we'll see if the men can, I guess, do a little bit more of a use, I guess, in terms of the men's pacemakers. Again,
Mhm.
Bernard Ngeno, Barnabas Kiptum, and Sila Kiptu, 61:20, the target for them at halfway. So, and there's no backup here, Kevin. Mark Scott and Victor Kaplanga dared to run 65 minutes in the second group. So there's no backup star,
Yeah.
uh, quarterback to come off the bench here and save things the way our women's pacer is at the moment. And our women's pacer is Segai Gemechu is the hero of the day for me at the moment. She's carrying that women's race all on her own, putting the team on her shoulders, so to speak, through coming up to 10K.
Chances that Mark Scott, because he's been running so well, just says screw it and goes for a half marathon PB.
No, I think, yeah, perhaps, but I think I would say a 10% chance. I mean, he's a pro, and he seems to get on pretty well with the other Brits, and I think he'll be like, nah, I better do the right thing and pace these guys and help them out. But yeah, I mean, he's
Yeah.
been running crazy, so 65 will feel like a jog to him. I mean, he
Yeah.
could definitely have had 8 beers last night and still run 65 this morning. I think 10, maybe
Is,
not, but definitely 7 or 8 beers, and that's the kind of shape he's in.
is there a sliding scale like you could use to like determine how good a shape you are based how many beers you could do and like still run sub 65 for a half?
I I think so. I think so. And
Okay.
maybe Mark Scott has put that to the test this weekend. I mean, I've no idea here what Mark Scott does to prepare for a race. We're completely making stuff up. Isn't it great though? We're just seeing some shots, and obviously anyone who's following the stream will be seeing them as well. To see crowds back at a major marathon. I
Hmm.
mean, obviously anyone who saw it in Berlin last week, but I think there's 40,000 people running the London Marathon today. And as the race director Chris Brasher said during the week, it was 889 days since the last normal London Marathon, um,
Wow.
which is, yeah, or sorry, Hugh Brasher is the race director, his Chris Brasher's son. But yeah, 889 days. April 2019 was the last normal London Marathon. I guess obviously we had the lockdown version around St James's Park last year. So yeah, it's great to
And then
see
the
the packs back because it's the biggest fundraising single day event in the world. There's some tidbit of
oh wow.
information. He raised a
Oh.
£1 billion sterling. That's probably about 1.3 or $1.4 billion in its
Mhm.
last normal edition in 2019. Oh, we've hit 10K.
Yeah, producer Colt getting ambitious. Didn't even need to call that out. Somehow he intuitively knew
He was
when the
on it.
10K. Yeah, I don't know Colt's like running experience. I mean, he wears a lot of hats. I mean, he's passionate about a lot of different sports, but this was impressive. Okay, he ran the 200 in 7th grade, we're hearing. This is impressive. Okay, so they're 32:42, so projected finish time just under 2:18. So they slowed a bit in that 5K segment. And we got how many in that lead group? Well, let's see. At least 12. I don't know. 12 have come through so far. Non-rabbits.
13, I think. Yeah, 30. Yeah, sorry,
Okay,
12 non-rabbits. So the baker's
there you go.
dozen, as they say. Um,
Yes. So they slowed a bit. Salpeter's there. Dereje, Jepkoskai, Melli, Koskai, Gemelli, Dibaba, Ymer, Morgatu, Ezimeru, Germa, and then Bakary. So everybody's there that we talked about in the.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much. I mean, it's all to play for at the moment. Nothing has really happened. It's a sensible pace, I think, and I don't think we'll see too many blow-ups. I mean, you would have to think there's at least 3 or 4 women who'll keep this pace going through the latter half, maybe more, and I think 1 or 2 definitely will be able to pick it up off this. So hard to know with Koskai. I mean, she's obviously sitting there towards the front. She looks to be running all right, whatever about the injury concerns. I think
Mhm.
the injury, if she's got this far running at this pace, I would doubt that the injury will actually affect her on the road if she is carrying one. But you would have to imagine coming off Tokyo, it might be her fitness that is affected. Maybe, I guess, when people start cramping and
Mhm.
tightening up in the last kind of 10 miles, the wheels might fall off and any flaws in your mechanics or biology might be found out. But I mean, at the moment, she looks to be running pretty well. But maybe just that edge of the fitness might have been taken off if she did have some interruptions on the build up. And again, I think, as we said, people always talk the big game at the press conference, and how quick she was to shoot down talk of Mary Catani's women's only record makes me think she's not really feeling it. And she's just going to
Mhm.
try to do this on talent and muscle memory. And I
Yep.
guess when you're, what is she, almost 4 minutes faster than everyone in the field, you
Mhm.
have a little margin for error to still beat everyone,
Mhm.
which must be a nice place to be.
We saw the women run past the majestic British clipper ship known as the Cutty Sark, one of my favorite parts every year, Cathal, in the London Marathon. Shout out to everybody in the chat who's bringing that up. Whenever you do see the Cutty Sark, the only proper response is that's a majestic British clipper ship.
It is. It didn't get set on fire at some one point, or am I imagining that? I think it
Uh,
was restored or something, or maybe it was a dream I had. Don't listen to anything I say.
I'm I'm
But
I'm
yeah, the
on
Cutty Sark,
Wikipedia.
it's impressive.
No, twice. Twice. Here we go. I'm on Wikipedia. The ship has been damaged by fire twice. First on May 21st, 2007, while undergoing conservation. Whoops. Talk about unintended circumstances. And then restored and reopened. And then on October 19th, 2014, they were damaged in a smaller fire. So yeah, twice. And once
Can
attempting preserve the Cutty Sark, people. It is a national treasure. Let's
can
not set it on fire every 7 years.
can you imagine the meeting where like the boss of that whole operation was told, "So how did today's renovations go, Johnny?" "Well, Mick, I've got some news for you. I managed to set it on fire instead of restoring it."
I'm worried.
Uh, I'm sure.
2007 was the first one. 2014 was the second one. They're on a 7 year clip, and it's 2021 right now. Protect the Cutty Sark at all
Yeah,
costs in
yeah,
2021. No conservation.
guard that place. Yeah, absolutely. Don't just leave it. It's fine as it is. It's going to be okay. It's survived this long. It'll be okay. Don't go near it. Don't touch it. But yeah,
Oh my
beautiful ship
gosh.
that it is. It's always cool. Have you ever been to the London Marathon?
I've never been to London, Cathal. I've been to your
Okay,
homeland. I've been to your homeland, but I have not been
excellent.
to London.
A name like Sully, I guess you'd have visited my homeland. Surely, is
Yeah.
your ancestry Irish? I know we're
It's
diversifying
well,
here a lot. Digressing.
everybody everybody speculates that it is. I don't have any confirmation that it is. I walked around all of Dublin like looking for a street sign or a business or anything. Never found anything. But it's really disappointing because everybody just assumes. So I wanted to say yes, but I'm not really. I need to do one of those deep dives into my family history.
Mm,
So I didn't see anything. Went to
excellent. Yeah,
Dublin,
but
went to Cork, didn't see anything.
damn, you need to search further. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the thing about London is like I've been probably I think 3 times maybe to the London Marathon. Obviously, been in London a few weekends, but like, it's just. I mean, I know every big city is kind of a super cool place to be the day of marathon or the weekend of the marathon.
Mhm.
New York similar, but just there's such a good buzz around the city. I mean, it's. I think obviously you'll have been to some of the US marathons and things like that, and
Yeah.
it's such a cool. I think even in the media, once you've done your work, sometimes I always like going out and watching. Like by the time we're finished our work, it's normally the 5, 6, 7 hour finishers, and there's some often the most powerful
Yeah.
reactions when you see those people hit the finish. And then in the bars and restaurants, that night and the day after, there's just such a great atmosphere around the city. And London is very much like that. You know, it just does turn into a running festival, the entire city. And I think they're expecting 500,000 people on the streets today. I think there's
Yeah.
probably is it 8 million or so in London, but like how great that is. COVID restrictions are pretty much back to normal now in terms of lifted in London. Um, so like it's going to be great for the athletes to have this. And obviously, we better cut back to the race here because one of the big
Yeah.
men, as predicted by many, is in big trouble. Shura Kitata, last year's champion, he had an injury coming into the Tokyo Olympics, and talk about people themselves down. This guy could not have talked himself down any further into a well. And he was in the basement on Thursday at the press conference because he was like, "Yeah, I still have hamstring problems." And sure enough, I think
Yeah.
we're seeing them come to fruition there. He's got some tape on his knee as well, just for good measure. I think we can safely say 9 minutes into the men's race, Shura Kitata will not be defending his title this year successfully.
They were out quick. I mean, just the eye test before they even showed the split. And we know the first, opening miles of London is always quick, but it did look like the Pacers were just flying down there. I think we saw 4:18 for the second mile. You got three Pacers up there. But yeah, if Katata's out, you got six men there, which going in, if you broke the race into tiers, you had Katata, you could say, okay, reigning champion, but then you had seven guys: Legesse, Garamu, Akiru, Chibet, Lema, uh, Atana, who had all run under 2:04. So you had Katata plus the six. Now we were down. It looked like we were already down to six in there already. Like, what's that they say? Separating the wheat from the chaff. I don't know if is that, do
Mm.
they say that in Ireland? I think that might just be an American
They
thing.
do,
Actually,
yeah, yeah.
oh, they do.
No,
Okay,
it's
maybe
true.
it probably started there. I'm just like presuming like that saying's originated in America when
Yeah,
you're
I
like, no,
think
we were doing that in 1400.
no, Allah. I think it is probably more American, but I've definitely heard that plenty in Ireland. Yeah, I mean Ireland. A lot of Irish people get offended, but we're kind of a mini Britain, and then Ireland and Britain in ways we're kind of a mini America. You know, as much as a lot of
Mhm,
people would like to deny it, we absorb so much of the Hollywood culture and music culture and every other form of culture these days. So
mhm.
yeah, a lot of teenagers in Ireland talk with almost American accents because they're so indoctrinated into the world of
Really?
TikTok and Instagram and Hollywood movies. Almost, yeah. There's a certain sector of South Dublin, and they talk completely different than North Dublin. But to be honest, South Dublin sounds very Americanized, I would say, in terms of, and a lot of the lingo is
It
American
was
slang, I suppose, as well.
It was funny when I was in Ireland, they're like, "Oh," when we left Dublin and we told them we're going to Cork, like, "They talk funny down there." And I was like, "Really? How?" And then they're like, "Yeah, they'll talk like this." And I was like, "That sounds exactly how you were talking before." I could not tell the difference. And then someone explained, it's like, "Oh yeah, it's like, different regions in the United States, like, how people like in the South talk versus people in the Midwest, the North." I was like, "Okay, well, I tried to listen for it. I did not have the sophisticated ear." But see, I think I'm waiting for American teenagers to start talking like people in Ireland. I think that would be the power move out here. Like
Yeah, when
that's a way cooler transition.
when our movie business takes over the world and Netflix is predominantly Irish TV shows, then I think we can get ready for that. I mean, Normal People was popular last year in a lot of places, that
Yeah.
TV show. So, a lot of Americans got into that. So maybe
Yeah.
eventually our culture will leak its way further out into the world instead of just in a drinking and a music fashion in terms of our
Yeah.
pubs.
I just want to hear some
But
kid
yeah.
in like raised in like Lawrence, Kansas get interviewed after winning a cross country title and be like, "Oh, yes."
Well, that's fine. That was a pretty good oh yes. Once I went on a road trip across the US, and in Kansas, because you mentioned it, it's funny, but we stopped for like lunch or something, and our waitress came out and took our order, and she was so blown away by me and my friend's accents that she called out like the kitchen staff and then just came out
Oh,
and
really?
presented us in a kind of a ta-da way and said, "Talk." And then me and my friends started talking, and they started going, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And we were like, essentially like aliens who are just, because obviously I've been on both coasts a lot, and
Yeah,
an
yeah.
Irish accent. You're overrun with us in both the West and East Coasts, I guess. But yeah, when you get into the kind of Middle America, small towns, it was quite interesting to walk around with an Irish accent, and some great
Have you
experiences chatting
s-
to the locals and stuff.
have you seen the clip? I don't know if it's made its way to you, but a basketball player in the NBA named Anthony Edwards plays for the Minnesota
Yes,
Timberwolves, and he gets asked by an Irish reporter, and he's like, "Wait, can you repeat your question? I was just listening to your accent." And he's like, "Where are you
yeah,
from?"
I love that. That was
He's-
hilarious.
that kind
And it
of
was one of the
represents,
thickest Irish accents also.
yeah, that like represents Americans' feelings, I think, towards Irish accents. I think like Anthony
Yeah,
Edwards
there's a
summed
lot
it up
of
like, "I wasn't listening. I was just your accent's so awesome that I couldn't even pay attention to what you're saying."
I think anyone who's forced to listen to me today might be saying the same. Just no one's paying attention to the nonsense we're talking about. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I guess looking back at the women's race for a moment, I guess if we
yeah.
recall, there is a marathon going on occasionally, I suppose. But we'll just talk about accents for the rest of the show. It'll be good. But yeah, it looks like Salpeter is really pushing things along out front. She definitely is the most keen of that main women's pack to push things, and Casca is still just chilling.
Yeah, Sal Peter's an interesting one because she has the amazing PB, the second best PB of anybody in the group with the 2:17:45. But then she's coming off the Olympic performance where she got 66. And like you see that run, it's like, well, would I rather have, if I'm making a pick, would I rather pick somebody who got 66 in the Olympics and maybe shut it down early and save something, or would you rather have, you put Koskai aside because she's sort of in a different category, but someone like Rosa DeRegge, who was fourth at the Olympics, clearly went all out there and showed better form. She was 60 places ahead of Salpeter, but probably put more out as well.
Yeah, it's really hard to know. I mean, physically, what Salpeter went through at the Olympics, you would have to imagine has taken a toll.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, like third to 66th in the space of a few miles, it was crazy. And 2:48. I mean, even just time she ran, just to have run that to have spent 2 hours 48 minutes
Mhm.
soldiering around those final few miles as she dealt with what she was dealing with. I mean, it must have left her, again, no biology degree here, but in terms of like immunosuppression and muscle damage and all
Mhm.
that, you would have to imagine that the few weeks after that were not too nice for saltpeter. And I guess it was interesting. I guess she probably signed up to run London before Tokyo, so
Yeah.
probably didn't have much choice in the matter. But you know, you got to imagine that 7 8 weeks is not enough to come back. But I guess it's been done before, and I suppose motivation wise, you would have to
Yeah.
believe that she's extremely motivated. Because I think if she had got the bronze medal and then was coming here, you'd probably be like, she's not going to win London. She's it's the classic cliche, but it's
Yeah.
like maybe she's not going to want it enough. But the fact she had a bronze medal slip from her grasp in those final few miles in Tokyo, you'd have to imagine she's like, screw this. How do I put this disappointment behind me best? And it's to probably get out there and try and win London. And I mean, Paula Radcliffe, similar situation.
Mhm.
Athens 2004, had the meltdown, ran herself to a
Yeah.
standstill around the 21, 22 miles, something like that. Was crying on the road. That was in August. And then, it was only, what was it, early November is the first week, New York Marathon. So probably that might have been 10 or 11 weeks or something, and was back out there winning the New York Marathon. So not impossible, but I think improbable, I would say, that Salpeter
Mhm.
wins today or even gets in the top 2 or 3. But again, 2:17:45, second quickest woman in the race. She's not going to be far away if she's right, but we're only going to find out in the next 45 minutes or so if all these Tokyo turnaround athletes are right.
Yeah. Someone in the chat mentioned that she had, I think they're referring to Salpeter here, correct me if I'm wrong, that she had experienced cramps and she was doing well beforehand. And then just it was a
Yeah,
cramping
she
issue.
was.
And then, okay.
Yeah, she spoke about it very openly afterwards, and it was period cramps. She was on her period at the time, and I know it's a subject not many people talk about, and it was great that
Mhm.
Salpeter did talk about it because
Mhm.
I think especially because there's so many male journalists in the sports world and the running world that they
Mhm.
almost freeze up as in asking what might be the issue, and then so many female athletes are hesitant to almost use it as an excuse. But even when female athletes and talk to female athletes, they will tell you, like, privately or whatever, they'll be like, yeah, that's why I ran so badly at that race. And
Yeah.
they'll tell you, and anyone who knows any women knows how it can affect them. And I think she got vicious cramps basically those final few miles related to that, and that was likely what cost her. Obviously, we'll never know what would have happened, but it's likely may have cost her an Olympic medal. And I think it was good to see that conversation started. I think because it probably should be a thing in women's sport where people don't feel any hesitancy to walk off the soccer
Mhm.
pitch or the tennis court or the track and just say, yeah, I was on my period and that's why I sucked, because a lot of the other times, sometimes a lot of athletes have spoken about it, like Jasmine Sawyers, the British long jumper, and others in recent years, where they're almost like afraid to say it. And then when you're sometimes afraid to say it, you end up getting slated and stuff because people are like, oh, well, she ran
Mhm.
terrible there. She was like way off her personal best. And they have a
Yeah.
good excuse, but they just are kind of like hesitant to say it because people will be like, oh, whatever, like, let's not talk about that. But I think that very much
Mhm.
needs to change in the sport. And Salpeter led the way in terms of changing that.
I just saw a shot of Kitata and it made me think. I don't think anybody's been in no man's land that badly 15 minutes into a marathon, right? Because
Mm,
the elite field's pretty big, right? The elite field, even the elite field is pretty big, and he's found himself in no man's land that quickly. Okay, so we got some splits here. So first we'll go to the women here. Again, Colt just showing off at this point with his ability to toggle
so
between
fast.
on the splits. Uh 2:18:08 projected time. Everybody's there. The men's is interesting though. Can we get the men's 5K splits up there, Cole? Because anybody who's watching saw it, and anybody who's been looking at the start list pre-race knew these are the names, and it's boiled down this quickly to this group because Katata there in seventh. You can take him off. He's clearly not 100%, nowhere near 100%. So you have basically a 6-person race already. Lemma, Chibet, Garamu, Ikiru, Legesse, and Kipchumba. Like this was the group that we were talking about going in, Cathal, and there was a dividing line there, and you can just see it right now in the results because you go from then you have Katata there, like I said, in no man's land of all no man's land, and then the next person in eighth place, Tristan Woodfin, is projected for 209.26. So you see very clearly you got 6 guys who are running sub 203 pace, and then a big gulf.
Yeah, and great work from the Pacers as well. They're bang on cue where they should be at the moment. And yeah, Katada, and I think anyone who's watching now and sees Katada, like he is way off that backpack. And like obviously they're
Yeah.
running quick, but he is not coming back from this. You know, there's just no way. That's not the way he runs. Katada, when he's fit, like Kipchoge, he doesn't hang out in 8th or 9th or 10th position or drift off the back the way Bekele might. Katada is always up
Right.
the front and pushing things along. He's definitely not right. That hamstring injury is not right. It's not healed. And it's probably cost him a good bit of fitness. And if you're wondering why he's staying in anyway, uh, if you get London gives out a lot of appearance fees and pretty hefty appearance fees. And if you drop out of the race before halfway, I think you surrender your appearance fee or the vast majority of it. If you make it to halfway and drop out, I believe that you get half your appearance fee, is the rule, from talking to an elite
Okay.
marathoner recently about this. So I would strongly suspect that Shura Katada is churning through to halfway here, and then he's going to step off the course because he knows it's not going to happen for him today. But I would suspect he'll be thinking, right, he's the reigning champion. I'm sure a decent appearance fee for coming back to London, and to at least get 50% of that, he needs to make halfway. So I'd suspect that's what we'll see him do. And who knows, maybe if it's early-ish in the marathon season, you know, in terms of he doesn't want to damage himself and just ruin his career by being
Mhm.
out there on the roads for 26 miles, make it to halfway, get his little payday, write it off, and then maybe you can start looking at, you know, you've like Valencia Marathon is a great one in December, and then obviously you've so many as well early next year, and you can get that hamstring right and come back for one in the spring. Perhaps would be the best move for him today, the way things are going. But maybe he'll make me eat my words and he'll come back and somehow win. But I doubt it.
He'll pull a Bekele, just yo-yo back in front.
Mm.
So really, appearance. It's not just an appearance fee because you already knew you had to start, but now it's appearance and completion, participate at least halfway fee. Really, if you want to get
Yeah,
money.
exactly.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah. Otherwise, unless you got a really good agent. If you got a really good agent, you just wave at the start line, do a couple miles, and bid adieu and go
Yeah,
cash your check. But
I'm sure you get something because so many athletes, even you know, when they get injured on the build up to a race, you see them sort of hanging around the race. Maybe it's just that their sponsors need them there to do expo stuff and talks and things like that. But
mhm.
I know sometimes when you see an athlete building up for a big marathon and they've been announced 6 months in advance, and then I don't know, 2 weeks before you hear they're injured and they pulled out, you always kind of end up
Mhm.
seeing them still at the race. They're always there, which maybe, I don't know, maybe it's to fulfill some level of sponsor obligation to the race, or maybe it's just for their own personal sponsors,
Yeah.
or maybe it's just because they have nothing else to do and they're like, my flights are booked. I'll go have a holiday in London for the weekend for myself.
David Monty
Katada,
wrote a
though,
good article. Go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was just
I was
saying
going to say
David Monty
Katada.
wrote a good article leading into this about just like London's strategy basically for fielding the race is big appearance fee, big time bonus. So the prize money for winning isn't that high relative to other marathons, but they've gone all in on that two-pronged strategy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think, and talking to a manager as well a couple of years ago, he always said London is like the fairest and the most generous in terms of payouts. You know, a lot of the other athletes, like say New York has, I think it's a bigger first prize. It's $100,000 in New York. I think London is like 55 or something. It's definitely way less than New
Mhm.
York, but uh, they say like in London, the managers say, you know, down to like 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th appearance fees. London, I mean, it's easy to when you've the biggest budget, which London has,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of the managers and the athletes in this sport always talk about, when you talk about the world's best marathon, objectively, people without bias will always say it is London. And of course, the reason for that is they have the biggest budget, you know. So it's very easy to
Mhm.
have the world's best marathon. But I mean, from media to race organizers to the broadcast to every facet of the London Marathon is just brilliantly run. And even from a media perspective, it's an absolute joy to go over and cover it. And it's not just for the
Mhm.
breakfast buffets, you know. They also give you a free London Marathon fleece or jacket every year for the
There you
media,
go.
us lowly
There you
members of the media. So, Kevin, that is motivation enough for you to get to
I know.
London one of these years.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just gonna be an Ireland guy my whole life, Cathal. Because I'll tell you what,
Yeah,
I've never done a watch party with a British person. I've only done a watch party with an Irishman now. So I'm
exactly.
partial. I'm a
That's
loyal. I'm a loyal.
yeah, exactly. We've
I,
taken you in.
I,
Um, but yeah, the now this I have to say this is great pacemaking in the men's race. I mean,
mhm.
they're actually in a slight small V formation there as well. So
Yeah, yeah,
Vincent
yeah.
Kipchumba, I think it is there, the 6'1" Kenyan, second last year, who is slotted in behind the three pacemakers and smartly as well on his part because he is basically getting zero wind in his face at the moment. He has shelter from all sides, I suppose. And yeah, it's Lime or it's not Lime, it is Legacy then. It's just slotting
Mm.
in behind him. But yeah, nothing. I mean, Kitata going down is the big news, I suppose, so far in the men's race. But I think a lot of us expected that beforehand. And other than that, I guess nothing surprising, I guess, is happening in the men's race up this first half hour.
If Kitata was talking down his chances at the press conference and really throwing cold water on the idea that he would be able to run without injury, Legesse was a bit of the opposite perspective. Like he was very confident at the press conference coming in, and why wouldn't you be with how fast he's run and how well he's done at previous majors? He's pretty solid. So maybe again, you never can tell. Confident talk doesn't necessarily lead to fast running, but he certainly was not shy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's won Tokyo twice before. He had some injuries earlier this year, so he missed the Ethiopian Olympic trials. But I think in terms of an autumn marathon, I, I would see the absence of a Olympic marathon definitely as a plus, assuming someone has no other injury problem. And I think that'll be the case right the way through to New York. In terms of I think generally if you have two relatively similarly talented athletes and one ran Tokyo and one didn't, I think we'll be seeing the non-Tokyo athletes coming to the top more so. And I think Legacy is definitely in that boat. I mean, 2:02:48 he's run. There we see Kitata is it's going to be a lonely road even to halfway, I
Yeah.
think, for Kitata. It's tough, but he's sticking it out. Probably the best excuse ever Kitata came up with as well when he ran disappointing in London a few years ago. He said he forgot to eat breakfast on the morning of the race. Um,
Hmm.
which was a novel one. He said he had some fruit, I think. He just had fruit for breakfast, but he said I basically forgot to have a proper breakfast. And he had stomach issues and energy ran out and things fell apart. But yeah, second to Kipchoge, Kitata was before. I think he might have run his personal best, and he's only run 2:04:49. But
Yeah.
everyone, I suppose, really knows Kitata is a 2:02 type, 2:03 guy in waiting, and obviously second in New York, winner in London last year. He'll be back, I'm sure. He's young, he's only 25, so but it's not going to
His
be his
day
day
last
today.
year. Yeah, his day last year came on, well, loop course, obviously, and slower times just on the way they ran it. And maybe that helped him. We don't know, but that was pretty wild with what's 8 guys in contention with 1 lap to go, and Kipchoge ended up being at the back of that pack. Okay, so we're through 10K here. It's the big six with the three pacers. We can throw those splits up when we get them. So projected time slowed. So now we are north of 2:03, which was expected. The first 5K. Do you remember Cathal that year when Selassie was the honorary rabbit and he just went out just insanely fast for the first 5? Because why would you do anything else if you're Haile Gebrselassie than go out insanely fast for the first 5K? So we're used to seeing these quick splits early on.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember years ago when I think before Kipchoge had the world record, and I remember putting money on him to break the world record because I was like, he's going to do it. I think it was probably 5 months before he did it in Berlin. Was it 2018, the super hot marathon?
Hmm.
And I think they
Hmm.
did something really quick at halfway, like 61 or something. And I remember just thinking, it's 26 degrees, 27 degrees Celsius, whatever it was, like high
Hmm.
70s. That day, and I remember a lot of the people were saying this is probably kind of dumb, and the pacemakers went crazy. And Kipchoge, being Kipchoge, hung on and won. But I think it was only a 2:03 or something.
Hmm.
The irony of always saying only
Yeah.
2:03. It's, but yeah, I think, I mean, I think it's sensible today, 2:03 pace, as we see the marvelous Cutty Sark again, not on
There it
fire again,
is.
thankfully.
Majestic. Absolutely majestic. Just a great shot. They
Yeah,
always frame up the Cuddy Sark perfectly, too.
yeah, it's
Just
perfect.
poof,
Yeah,
there it
they know what
is.
they're doing.
Again. It's been lit on fire twice in the last 14 years. Let's not make it 3 times, guys. Let's work together.
I'm sure they've kept their pyrotechnics displays well removed from the Cutty Sark. But
Yeah.
how great it is there to see, like, as well. I mean, crowds around the Cutty Sark must be
Hmm.
8 or 10 deep there. It's crazy. And I mean, it's funny. I'm actually one of my friends, Michelle Samet, who's out here as well at the moment over in Greece, and she was saying that she ran the London Marathon a few years back, one experience, and she just said it was a wall of noise the entire way, that she just said you can't comprehend the noise in London as an ordinary runner. I mean, obviously for the elites, it's even more because, you know, you've athletes coming through from many hours and the volume isn't going to be quite at that pitch the entire way for like those many hours. But she said it was incredible for the entire way. And imagine what it's like for these elites. You know, we have that, is it the screaming wall or the wall of, what's it called in Boston, where they run
Oh
through
yeah,
that section?
yeah, yeah. I don't. Oh man.
Is that outside?
Uh,
Was it Wellesley College?
yeah, it's Wellesley. I don't
I
remember the
forget the
name of
term
it
for
though.
it. Yeah, but I think one of the
Scream
best
tunnel.
things I've ever seen in marathon broadcasting was, yeah,
Scream
the
tunnel.
scream tunnel. That's it. I
Yeah.
think one of the best things I've ever seen in broadcasting of a marathon was when whoever the broadcaster was turned off the commentary. They just stopped talking and said, "Let's just listen for the next few
Mhm.
minutes to what the athletes are hearing as they run through it." And I think in London, that scream tunnel in London, I think that's kind of an elongated scream tunnel from what athletes seem to say the whole way around. That they just say that the noise and the atmosphere the whole way basically is just, and obviously for the recreational runner or the kind of more mortal runner
Mhm.
among us or the mass runner, that's crazy. But for the elite runner, imagine these people have been waiting here an hour or two, and once they get the first sight of that elite pack, it must just be crazy to experience. It must actually be kind of hard to communicate when you're
Yeah.
going through areas like that are so thickly crowded on each side.
So you probably saw on the when they showed the men's pack there, Tristan Woodfin with of Canada with the blue shorts. He's getting the benefit. He's got two pacers. He's got Mark Scott and another pacer all to himself. And through 10K, he was 209.36 pace, which is only would be a PB for him. Obviously, his PB comes from London last year when he ran 210, but he's looking, he said if the weather cooperates, Canadian record of Cam Levins, which is 209.25. So he's only 11 seconds off that pace for the Canadian record. Just something to keep an eye on a little bit farther down in the results.
Definitely, yeah. That'll be interesting to see if he can keep up that pace. That is a tough record though as well for Tristan to go after. Um,
Mhm.
but again, we've seen a lot of people typically negative splits so often in London, so perhaps that's in his master plan today. To obviously doesn't need to find too much. We've still got
Yeah.
our one heroic pacemaker there in the women's race, though. The
Yes.
incredible, the wonderful, the star of the London Marathon, Segai Gimechu on the right. She's still leading it, but I guess Jocelyn Jepkoska is to the fore as well, as all the athletes run for their water bottles. And we saw, was it the women's champion in Berlin there missed her water bottle at, I think it
Hmm.
was a key water bottle as well at like 30K or something. You do
Well,
not want to be missing any of these energy drinks because these are very much critical ones. Maybe the 35 and 40K, if you miss them, it's not such a big deal, but certainly in
mhm.
the middle of the race, these are the key ones.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say it's thinning out a bit, but I think that's more just the byproduct of them trying to get their bottles. I think they're going to clump back together. The pacer is running like they know she's the 218 person and she's just clipping them off, and I think at this point obviously everybody's locked in on that pace, at least for the time being. Remember the latest projection of 15K was 218.08 there. So it might, I think it might be a while. I think we might get to another 10K before we see someone drop off. Just when you look at the credentials of this group, yeah, there's some people in here who are north of 218, but given that fast first 5K, I think it could be like this for maybe 10K might be a little ambitious, but at least another 5K. What do you think?
Yeah, I
Oh,
think so. It seems pretty steady. It's funny as they pass Tower Bridge. Oh, I'm
go
back.
ahead.
Sorry.
You're
If you can hear
back.
me all right, just let me know. If not, I'll refresh my browser. But yeah, it's funny seeing them. Seen him pass Tower Bridge here. It's funny we talked about Kitata dropping out, but it just reminded me there because they're going across obviously the wonderful Tower Bridge. It's a 20k marker, but the meet hotel for the athletes is right on the edge of Tower Bridge. There, it's just down to I think it's to the
Mhm.
left of the shot there. No, it's to the right, just on the other side of the river. But when Kitata gets to halfway, he's going to run right past the meat hotel and be aware that there's a hot meal and a cup of tea and all his gear and his bedroom is just right there. And I think that is going to be an extremely attractive place. Obviously, he's going to make 21k for the appearance fee. But I think sure Kitata, once he gets there, will be like, now it's a nice short walk back to my hotel.
Yeah,
I don't have
yeah.
to wait around for as they say in cycling, the broom wagon to sweep me up, bring
The
me back,
broom
and have
rack.
to follow the race for the next hour in the back of a van. Much rather.
Yeah. So we got a 20k split now. The women picked it up from 15 to 20k
I
because
think
we're
we've
17:14 pace. 2:17:14. They were 65:03. Let's throw those splits up there again if we could. Colt doing just amazing work here at it is now what 4 a.m. in Austin, Texas. I have my computer is set to Pacific time too, so it says 2 a.m. and I for a second I believed it and I was like, wait a minute, but that's like when I woke up. So a little disoriented still. But so you have the results there on the screen. Salpeter, Azamero, Meli, Koskai, Mugetu, Gurma, Jepkoska, Ymer, Bekere, Dereje, Debaba, Jameli. Hey, like when I'm watching that though, Cathal, I'm not thinking, hey, they're running 217 pace. It just does. It looks really comfortable for them.
I think so, yeah. But I think I think 217 pace is really comfortable for all of these women at 68:30 or so at halfway. So many of them have run 64, 65, 66. So I think all of them will be comfortable. And I think
Yeah.
because, like we said about the depth, I mean, this is a women's field that we've never had a women's field like this in the history of marathoning, I think, in terms of depth. So I think it's no surprise, but it's almost like an optical illusion that we're so conditioned to seeing a big group, meaning that the pace is slow and that it'll be easy. But here, I think there's such a quality in that group that it does feel relatively comfortable for them at the moment. But I think once we get to again 30k, 20 miles marker, that will be splintering apart. I think one or two people will be picking it up, perhaps Koskai, perhaps Jep Koskai, maybe
Yeah.
Salpeter, and I think the rest will be dying slowly towards the finish. But I don't think anyone will blow. I don't think it'll be as bad as Berlin. I think we'll see a lot
Yeah.
of 218s and 219s throughout the kind of top 6, 7, 8, 9 athletes. And then maybe one or two athletes going around 216, I think is what we might see. But I think it's quite sensible. But yeah, certainly all to play for at the moment. Everyone's keeping their cards close to their chest. And it'll be interesting if it stays at this pace because I think no one's really targeting a time here. Maybe Jep Koskai will be thinking, she's 218.40. We know
Hmm.
she's probably a much better athlete than that. Maybe she'll be thinking personal best. So I wouldn't be surprised if when the pacemakers step off that Jep Koskai she's been very much towards the 4, even when the pacemakers were kind of non-existent there, the 3 off the front, first 5k, 10k. She was kind of the one pushing things along in that pack at the front, so I would expect that she'll start pushing it along. But then I think everyone is also kind of traditionally waiting for the killer move of Koskai, and who knows if we're going to see that today, given the rumored issues Koskai has had on the build-up.
Hmm. Shara and Hoog, by the way, are winning these wheelchair races. We'll we'll let you know when they cross the line today. I want to ask you something here. From your professional opinion, what's the appropriate number to measure marathon depth? Do you think like top 5? Is that a good way to say this was the deepest marathon, or does it need to go deeper?
I think top 5, yeah, is fair. I mean, it,
Okay.
it definitely helps to go like top 8 or top 10, but I think top 5 is fair because like if you have 5 good athletes in the race, it makes a good race. And I think the 6th to 10th for the average viewer, and even for us, kind of in the running media world, I don't think it draws that much more attention to be like. I mean, the stats guys love it, when they say it's the
Yeah.
first time ever with 8 men under 205. But I don't know. I kind of find myself a bit kind of. I don't really mind. I mean, it's nice that there was a pack, but
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
always I think a marathon that would intrigue me generally is like 2 to 3 to 4 very good athletes of the same level up the front together. At both
Hmm.
races today have that. I mean, both races have 7, 8, 9 athletes, that kind of caliber. Um, but yeah, I think top 5 is a good thing to go for. But obviously, I suppose the vast majority of marathons don't have the money to be able to put that together. And this year, I think it's bigger. It's more the case than ever before that the dilution of talent across the board
Yeah.
is going to be massive. But I guess from a from the US perspective as well, you must be very excited as well with all the marathons to come. I mean, Chicago and Boston the same weekend, and then I
Yeah.
guess the slight dilution in talent, especially amongst the East Africans, and the lack of kind of budgets a lot of people have. It
Mhm.
might mean a lot more chances for the Americans to make the podium, perhaps
Yeah.
than we've seen in previous years.
Yeah, forget might. It does. I mean, look at the Chicago women's field. You have Ruth Chepngetich in there, and then it's all Americans. Like Gordon and I were joking about, how Shalane Flanagan's trying to run all these marathons sub 3. She might mess around and end up in the top like 8 in in Chicago. Now she probably doesn't want to because she's got Boston the next day. But we should check in on Flanagan here in a second when we get a chance, see if she's got a split. But the reason I ask
It's a
is
good
obviously
idea. Yeah.
this marathon with in terms of depth. I'm looking at the deepest women's fields. We talked about men, but deepest women. So Valencia 2019 had 4 women under 219 and 5 women under 219.30. So if we have more than 4, excuse me, under 219, we could say this is the deepest of all time, or more than 5 under 219.30. It'd be the deepest of all time.
I think we're going to probably see the deepest of all time for sure. I mean, you go down the list and you look at there's a lot of athletes, even running nerds will not have heard of, like the G2 Azimara 219, Tichis Gurma 219, Asheta Bekere 220, Valerie Gemelli 219. They're all not even considered in the top 5 or 6. They would be probably numbers 7, 8, 9, and 10 maybe on the list, and they're all 219, 220 athletes, and they could go to almost any marathon in the world, even a lot of the majors,
Yeah.
and a lot of them would be favorites to take the title, in the likes of the majors, and definitely in the likes of, Vienna, Paris, sort of the second slight tier of marathons, Milan, places like that. So it's incredible, really, the depth of this women's field. And we also have the standout athlete, the world record holder, the athlete who
Yeah.
ruled this event for many years and obviously undone in Tokyo. Perhaps maybe she had a few injury problems. Maybe the heat messed things up for her a little.
Hmm.
Hard to know. But again, I guess Perez Jepchirchir is a class athlete as well who's been on the rise. So maybe it's just Jepchirchir taking the mantle from Bridget Koskay is what we saw in Tokyo. But I don't know. I think Bridget Koskay's days are very much not done. I mean, she's still young enough to continue. I mean, these days, when you see Kipchoge, I mean, I think Kipchoge's officially listed as 35 or 36 or something, but like anyone
Hmm.
close to him says he's like at least 3 or 4 years older in that. Um, so Kipchoge really is like in his probably around 38, 39 and stuff. And I think he's obviously the model professional, but he's showing in athletes like Sinead Diver, who's ran her PB in London 2 years ago, I think it was, at the age of 42. They're
Yeah.
all showing that, if you take good care of yourself, you can be just as good at the marathon at 38 as you were at like 28. Um, so yeah, but obviously a tough event to hold yourself together for, and especially when you've made the millions, I'm sure the motivation starts running out a bit when you have an Olympic medal, I'm sure, in your back pocket.
A couple updates here. So I checked. If you search in the elite field, you don't see Shalane Flanagan because she started with the mass race. But I can confirm that she is leading the mass race over there through 10K. She was on 231 pace. Cathal, 231 pace. How's that for your second marathon in a week and traveling from Berlin to London?
Wow, and she ran, was it 2:36 or something in London?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, because when I saw her posts and the promotion around it, I was kind of like, initially I was like, "Whoa, this is huge," and then I was kind of like, I guess maybe a tiny bit deflated because I was like, "Oh, well, she's running them under 3," and I was like, "She's not really racing them," in
Yeah.
terms of, I was like, that's kind of like, in my head, I was kind of like, oh, she's kind of just doing like 6 long runs almost at a decent pace, through the autumn and
Mm-hmm.
obviously the travel and stuff. But then when I saw 2:36, I was like, oh damn, she's actually racing these as well. Maybe not full blown 100% preparation, going all out on the day, but obviously pretty close to it and not far off, I'm sure. Like, and yeah, I mean, from what did she have? Was it knee surgery she had, I think, in last year
Mm-hmm.
or something? And what a way to bounce back and test the orthopedic brilliance of your surgeon to see will her knee hold up and stuff for the next 6 weeks, especially that Boston Chicago weekend. I mean, That's
Yeah.
going to be tough,
Yeah.
especially if she tries to run like 2:30 something there. Surely that would be the weekend where she'd be like, right, 2:55 or something. That's enough,
Yeah.
but maybe not.
But but the thing that's tricky about that, like I said, that Chicago field is the one where, hey, if you run 2:31, like she's on pace to do here in this race, she could end up in the top five, which would just be a crazy result. I guess maybe, well, no, I think maybe top five. I guess depending on the weather. So Shar and Hogue are going to win the wheelchair races. I want to check in on these other splits here. Was that like 126.25 ish going across the line there for Hugh. Men through 15K, 2:03.22 pace, still those six. Katata is 52 seconds back. Women went through the half, 108.51. So that's 2:17.42 pace. So pretty much perfect. And that group is 12. That group is 12. Salpeter, Jepkaska, Ymer, Koskai, Azamero, Jameli, Meli, Dereje, Bekere, Murgetu, Gurma, and Debaba. So we're seeing the replay here of who come across there. Cathal, what do you? I mean, that's pretty much spot on, right? For the women, that's what they asked for halfway. I think we lost Cathal here for a moment, so we'll
I'm just,
refresh
I think I've
refresh him
lost
and
you
get him
guys. Am I
back.
still here?
He's back. There he is. There he is. We're gonna refresh him. We'll get him ready. He's queuing up for this big second half of the women's race. We're seeing Shar come in to finish here for the women in the wheelchair race. Can you hear me again, Cathal?
We're back.
Here it
The
is.
magic,
There you
the
go.
magic refresh brings us back. Yeah, the last I heard you taking us through the halfway splits there, the women quite sensible, I think, in terms of the pace, 68.51. And again, giant tip of the hat to Tsegai Gemechu, our hero of the day, doing
Yes.
God's work there in terms of carrying that women's field through when no one else was around. And of course, she is only supposed to run 69 minutes, but she stepped up and said, I'm going to give respectability to this pace at halfway because no one's going with the leading three pacers. And yeah, I think 68.51, I think we're going to be seeing them pick it up. Unless they start looking at each other, but I think there's enough class in there that I don't think they're going to start like really jogging or eyeing up each other. I think people like Jep Koskei, I think, are going to be in Salpeter as well, they're going to be pushing this along once Gemechu steps aside. And it'll be a sad day for all of us when Gemechu steps aside because what a job she
Yeah.
has done.
So half this field could fall apart and it would still be the deepest of all time. Like you'd need to see some. And again, that could happen. That could happen. We've seen that happen before at the end of major marathons. But you got 12 people to halfway in sub 2:18. Like if your goal as a race director was like, I want the highest amount of women to run as fast as possible, this seems like it went perfectly for you for the first half.
Absolutely. And I think as well, I mean, again, we can't criticize other marathons when they don't have the budget of London, but like I think what's great about London that makes it stand out is that you get the fast times, but you also get a great race. Like Berlin did a great job last week of getting it was Giadola and obviously going up against Bekele. So you had two
Yeah.
real standout athletes, and it was kind of like a head to head. And then we had the kind of athletes coming from behind when they're going up, which was a really interesting narrative and stuff. But again, they just a lot of marathons don't have the budget to go more than two or three kind of really A-list
Yeah.
marathon names. And then when you get a situation like Katata coming in and one of them has a hamstring injury, we often end up with one athlete just running behind pacemakers. And whether it's a guy running 2:03 or a woman running 2:17 or something, it can, to the viewer, it can get a little boring sometimes. And you're just like, this is a time trial, unless it's a world record attempt, in which case it's always interesting, no matter if it's one athlete on their own. But I think what's great about London is that so often in London we get the 2:02 to 2:03 for the men and the 2:17, 2:18 for the women. But it's
Mhm.
also there's so often two or three athletes coming down the embankment for those final 2 miles or so, and we don't know which way it's going to go. I mean, even Kipchoge at his peak a couple of years ago, was it Mozanet
Mhm.
Geramu was with him with like 2 miles to go or something. We were like,
Yeah.
God, is Kipchoge actually going to lose this race? Can this really
Mhm.
happen? And also, it's going to be a 2:02 race and a course record. It is the marathon that has it all. I think. So that's why it's going to be really interesting now in this next kind of 45 balls for the women, and our 15 is up, and who goes big? Who's your money on, Kevin?
On the men's
Let's
side of
nail our
things,
colours to the mast.
men's race or women's race?
Yeah, both.
Uh, I'll stick with I'm gonna stick with Kipchoge on the women. She was my pick going in, and I'll say Akiru for the men. I'm not gonna change. I didn't make official formal picks going in, but in my mind when I was writing the preview, like those two names jumped out. So I'll go with those two, Kipchoge and Akiru. What about you?
I hate to be a copycat, but I think I'm on the same page as you. I think Legacy or Ikiru for the men's. No, I'll be different. I'll go Legacy. Sure, he talks such a big game at the press conference.
Yeah.
He's got to be in good shape, surely.
Well,
And again, Jep
you
Koskei, I think Jep Koskei just ticks a lot of boxes. Then in the women's side, didn't run
yeah.
Tokyo, an athlete on the rise, has learned the marathon, has experience on the course. All word I've heard is that she's in good shape and her training has gone well. So, and no rumors of injuries the way I've heard around Koskei. But and Koskei, even if she's 97%, could still blow them all out of the water. So I won't hold my breath.
Mhm. So you sort of you have an interesting situation in the men's field, right? We talk about the numbers game for the women, where it's like, all right, we got 12 there, and if you're using 218 as the same marker as 204, which I don't, someone can correct me if those are the lineup, but it's like for the men you just have six, right? You have six there, so if half of that field falls apart, then we're looking at a very very small number of guys left, and the depth would still be remarkable at that point, but there's an opportunity, a bigger opportunity for something otherworldly, I guess, in the history of marathoning right now, developing on the women's side of things. Now, I could be wrong. All six of these guys could stay on pace, and all six could run 204. But just the laws of the marathon tell us. I mean, we'll get the 20K split, and we'll be able to see. But right now, they're all sitting in 203.20 position, and maybe that's comfortable for them. But just the women, just with that many folks under that many women under 218 paces is just completely remarkable. It looks like we do have one person who's dropped off for the women at 20K, and that's Mergetu. So that we would be down to 11 now on the women's side of things. But the six and the men just seem.
Ah,
I mean, they're earlier, but they're just clipping it along.
yeah. I mean, yeah, you'd expect. I think no one really to drop off even at this pace. I mean, they're six A-listers really
Yeah,
of global marathoning. From Lema, Ikiru, Chibet, Geramu, Legacy, and Kipchumba. But I don't know. I've heard like some of these athletes. You hear a lot of kind of the words of agents talking. Someone's carrying something. I know Vincent Kipchumba, I think, was not 100% coming in terms of his fitness, and I think Evans Chibet as well, as I think he was involved in I think there was a car accident or something and damaged his arm or something like that. So I think he might have still just be a few percent off Chibet and Kipchumba perhaps, and I think as we saw with Kitata, he was obviously many percent off his best Kitata.
yeah,
But if
yeah.
Kipchumba and Chibet, even being 1% off or a 0.5% off in this field, someone's going to find you out because someone's about to have the day of their life. There's just too many good men in there. And I think it's still realistic that someone does go sub 203 here. But again,
Oh
like the
yeah,
women's, it's going to be when we get to 25K, probably 30K is the best case scenario that one of those pacers gets to, and they step off. Then who's going to take it? And I think there's so much money on the line in London, but then I guess they incentivize them with the bonus things, as David Monty explained to us during the week in terms of the prize
yeah,
structure. That it's definitely worth someone's while to push on, but it's the classic, I guess, prisoner's dilemma of do you want to do what's best for you, but then help the other person as well, or do you get
yeah.
selfish and then you sabotage both of you? But we see Katata as soldiering on bravely, but we get his split. He's on 205.50 pace, but I
Yeah,
can't.
like that's.
And surely he's not going to run. He's not going to run 206 or 207. Sure, Katata, and finish like eighth or something. I've got to imagine he's going to take that option at the Tower Bridge and go back to his room and watch the rest of the race on TV.
he's looked in pain since about mile two, and part of that's just like the style he's running. But and then you say, oh, he's on 205, 206 pace. It's like, oh, okay. Like this guy is still moving so quick.
Yeah, no, it's insane. I think you
Yeah, like there's no, I mean, when you cut back and forth between the two runners, and you see, okay, here's a group running 203, and there's a guy running 205. Of course, the 205 guy is gonna look slower, but he looked even more pronounced. As we got a break here in the women's race, Cathal. We have a break in the women's race.
yeah, big break. Yeah, yeah, we're 5, and so that's definitely guy up front with Koskai sitting in behind. And then it's definitely 2 of the Ethiopian athletes. So I'm assuming that's Dejitu Azamaro and Ashete. It's either Ashete Bekere or, um, and then we've one athlete in 6th just dropping off as well. But yeah, I mean, it didn't take a genius. Kind of predicted the way athletes were shaping up once that pacemaker dropped. And again, Tugamechu or 219 female took them through and did the test for the elite women. But she's now dropped off, and I guess there's 2 athletes really interested in pushing this along, and that is Salpeter and Jeb Koskai. And the favorite, Bridget Koskai, is sitting in 3rd. She's done absolutely
Yeah,
nothing so far. And to be
yeah,
honest, I
yeah.
would probably expect her to continue doing nothing, given those rumors. And, given coming off the Olympic silver medal, why would she, when you've run 214, who cares about running 217? You just want that payday. But I don't know. How about you? Looking at this, who do you think looks strongest amongst this? What do we got? 6 athletes? Well, we got 5, and one just drifting off the back or trying to get back on the back there, which I think might be Valerie Gemelli.
Yeah, I'm interested to know, and we won't be able to tell until they show a mile split. Like, did they speed up, or did the pack just start to crater there? I mean, I think it was an injection of pace, which is crazy because at the last split they were already going 217-14 pace. So speeding up anymore, and you're getting into the land of the 216s. I mean, it is kind of funny we've gone this far, and like we've talked about Bryczkowska a bunch, obviously, but it's like she's done a really good job staying anonymous in that pack, not doing any work, not showing herself at all. And she does have a PB that's 4 minutes faster than, or almost 4 minutes faster than every single person in this field. So I mean, I like her. I like her position, but there's still, I would like it more, obviously, if it was down to 2. That's not saying anything too revelatory there, but like she's just done a good job. She's just done a good job staying basically low key, staying out of the picture, and cruising along. So keep an eye. Obviously, it feels weird. Keep an eye on the world record holder. She might be one to watch here. So yeah, Koskai's interesting. Koskai's
A brave
obviously
call.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, right. What do you think? Who looks good? I mean, other than Jeb Koskai.
I mean, Koskai does look good. I mean, she's in there chilling, but it's kind of getting late in this race. I mean, what do we got? 35 minutes of running left. It's not very much. It's 10K. And I would have to imagine if Koskai was Bridget Koskai, queen of the marathon, feeling her oats, the way she normally does and the way she ruled for the pace by said, I'm the boss here. But she hasn't done that. And the fact she makes me think she's not very confident. Ride as long
What?
as she can and draft on other athletes. So might still win, but it's definitely not going to be the Bridget Koskai of old. I mean, in 2020, she won London twice. Her average winning distance in those 4 major marathons. So she wasn't just winning races, she
Right.
was crushing everyone in female marathoning for a period of 3 years and absolutely destroying them.
Yeah. So I guess one
Her
one way to one way to
ridiculous
look at
ability
it.
alone.
Yeah, one way to look at it, oh yeah, this is just being a smart tactician sitting in the pace. The other way to look at it is, oh, that's a sign that she's not a 214. She's obviously not the same runner as 214 Bridget Koskai, which could still wins you every other marathon. But yeah, I mean we'll see. I guess there. Shar wins the women's wheelchair race, and I think we have another split here. So men through 20K, 202.40 pace. Uh, 202.40 for Kipchumba pace. They were 58.09 through 20K. It's still the big six though, but they're all on sub 203 pace still, and they stayed basically locked on to where they were between 15 and 20K. Yeah, the women's 30K split is going to be interesting. I really want to see that women's 30K split to see what the projected pace is now, because they look like they've really pressed their foot on the gas here. 5 women left.
Y- Yeah, I definitely think they look to have, apologies if I've had a few connection issues here, but yeah, they look like they've pushed it on. And just, I mean, you're going visually here, but to look at them at the front there, Salpeter and Jep Kaskai, I think all these women are under, they're now entering the real hurt zone of this race. Obviously, what have we got?
Mhm.
45 minutes or so of running left. It's not very much, but it'll be very interesting to see what they hit in their next split. Kaskai still looks very comfortable. But I don't know, maybe that's a rope-a-dope tactic on her point, in terms of she is kind of looking around, but she's had a very easy ride here to this point in the race. And Salpeter, I mean, Salpeter, though, this is so impressive from her. I mean, a woman who ran herself to a standstill 8 weeks ago in the most brutal conditions. I mean, I had a friend who knows, like, the Irish athlete Fionnuala McCormack, who finished, I think she was fifth maybe in Boston, was her best major result. But a stalwart of Irish running for many years was Fionnuala, and she finished, I think, 20s in the Tokyo Olympic Marathon, or Sapporo. And someone texted Fionnuala and said, "Congrats out there, brave run." And she said, "Double." And in terms of the conditions, obviously that's an Irish person, but any athlete going to Sapporo, the humidity and the heat up there was really horrible for those athletes. And when you expect mark, but I mean, we're at the 2/3 marker of this race pretty much, and
Yeah.
she's showing absolutely no ill effects so far. But I suppose the old cliche of the race only starts at 20 miles. I don't know. Do you believe that? Is that true?
No, the race starts at the start line. It starts at 20 miles when there's a really competitive race with a bunch of people involved, which sometimes there is, and we remember those races. But there's also races that are put to bed in the first half, and it's a one person race. Especially now, I feel like just like the manner in which people race the marathon, they just run so much more aggressively. Like it's just an unpredictable race, top to bottom. But what do you think? Do you think Koskai's assuming she came in with the injury, like is her confidence growing the closer she gets to the finish line? Because hey, I'm still with these women, and it's not obviously not tactical, but it's slower than she's run in her life. Or do you think she's getting less confident because she's like, I haven't shaken these women, and I don't know how fast I can close.
I think, I mean, you'd have to imagine she's probably had a few doubts coming in, if indeed that rumor of having her having an issue is true. But like, I think if that is true and she did have an issue coming in, then she has to be taking confidence, because, I mean, I think all athletes going into races, you convince yourself in your head there's almost something wrong with you. The negative voices start creeping up. And I saw a good tweet. I think it was the London Marathon tweeted earlier on the week, how tell us it's marathon week without telling us it's marathon week. And one of the responses was something like, I feel like I've just torn my hamstring, or, my knee is screwed, or something like that. And it was a great tweet that captured the kind of paranoia amongst athletes before big
Yeah.
races, that you're like, oh, is that a cold I feel coming on? Is the knee sore? And you're just like, is my bite? And I haven't slept well. They call it. So I think if Bridget Kosgei was probably feeling a little bit down and distracted and stressing over injuries, the fact she's made it to like 30K with only 4 athletes for company, I think she'll
Yeah.
be starting to remind herself, I am Bridget Kosgei, the fastest
Yeah.
female marathoner of all time by a long way at this point. And I think she'll be gaining huge confidence. But I mean, Jep Kosgei is an accomplished performer, and Salpeter on the track, really tell who's got the fastest kick.
Yeah. let's put the
kind of more of the classic marathoner, kind of low to the
let's put those men's half splits up if we could. Cole, can we get those men's half splits up? So we got 101.25 for halfway with the big six there. They're only a second apart. 202.49 to 202.51. Kitata a few minutes back. Cathal, what do you think of those men's halfway splits? Oh, Cathal's refreshing. Have a little bit of technical difficulties with Cathal's connections here. He went out real hard.
sorry.
He was really solid for the first part of the marathon. Now, Cathal, you got to rally for the second part. Cathal, you got to run all 26.2 miles. You're in Greece. You're in Greece, as you mentioned, birthplace of the marathon. You need that full
Yeah,
2.5 hour effort.
I mean, yeah, this journey to Greece to embed myself amongst the marathon culture occasionally doesn't work out the best in terms of the Wi-Fi issues up in the hilltop that I'm on. But I would have to say I have a nice view, and somewhere out on the horizon, the original town of Marathon is out there somewhere. At least I'm in Europe, the same continent as
Yeah.
London. So, but yeah, apologies for the few afterwards, or the director. But yeah, one pacer left in the men's race. I mean, it's an achievement in itself to go through the half marathon as fast as he's gone through, but you'd have to imagine he won't be lasting too much longer, given the pace they're going at. But yeah, Kitata, though, soldiering on, despite what I said about him probably dropping off. He's very much proving me wrong. We think he's going to make it to the finish. I mean, it's so is it arrogant of us to say he's plugging away and soldiering on when he's running? What is he running, like 205 pace? Let's have a look at Salpeter or Kitata. He's 205.40 at 20k, but
yeah, I mean, listen, every mile, every step he runs, you mentioned he's running farther away from the athlete hotel at this point. So
yeah,
at a certain point, he's closer to the finish than he is the meet hotel. So you got to keep going, right?
Yeah. He's still on sub 206 pace. 205.58 was his pace at halfway. So yeah, this is what I mean. He just needs to get through these next 2 to 3 miles, and then he'll be able to smell the finish. But I think the appearance fee also, if you make it to the finish, you get paid in full. So
there you go.
There we go. Well, I just thought he was having such a bad day being dropped at 5k that I was like, oh, he's having a really bad day. But maybe it's just like a B-level day for Kitata, in which case, get to the finish, my man, and you can hold your head high. And who knows, like if people blow up from this lead back, there's only 6 men racing ahead of him. He might get up to like 4th, 5th place and earn some nice prize money.
So we have the next split for the women. We have 30k with those 5 that are left. So Salpeter, Kipchoge, Bakary, and Ezemero. 27:06. So they sped up. The projected pace went well. Yeah, they went from about 27. Let's see. Hold on. No, they stayed pretty constant here to these last couple splits. But let's see. Yeah. I'm getting mixed numbers here, but it looks like 27:0. So it wasn't a massive injection of pace, basically is what I'm saying. It was quicker, but not dramatically so. But we're down to the final 5 there on the women's side of things. And it looks the gap is 23 seconds to Gemelli. And so that looks like it's that's going to be enough. So probably going to come from those 5 in the last 12k.
I would think so. Yeah, it'll be very hard to see anyone kind of coming outside those 5. And I think we see Koskei. No, I mean, I was going to say she looks to be struggling there. She's dropping back a bit, but I think you always have to kind of write off sometimes when people get gapped a little at the drink station, because a lot of athletes will either surge in front or just drop to the back just to make sure they get that drink. And she is just, but again, perhaps troubling signs that just even, oh no, she's closing up again. She just left like 10 meters or so, and then she just said, nah, I'm back, baby. And there she is, slotting in again in that classic position behind Salpeter and Kipchoge. And the 2 Ethiopians, I guess we haven't talked as much about them, but they're very much contenders now here, Ashedi Bakary and Digitu Azamaru. Azamaru obviously was She was first Amsterdam Marathon winner, 219 athlete in 2019, and was second to Ymer, the Ethiopian, at the what was that in the Valencia Marathon last year. So
Mm-hmm.
again, a 219 athlete. She looks to be on course for a huge personal best, and we see the last pacemaker there stepping on the side of the road. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Azamaru then as well, or sorry, Bakary then 220 personal best, but fourth here last year. So again, you would have to imagine if she stays going here, can very much smash her personal best and perhaps even top that fourth place finish. They've been sitting quietly. It's the classic kind of thing, I suppose, that Ethiopians traditionally were the big kickers in distance running, and they used to sit there and wait for the Kenyans and then outkick them and stuff. And
Yeah.
are we seeing that slightly play out here? Because it's certainly Jeb Kosgei pushing things along, and Salpeter, obviously, the runs for Israel now, but grew up in Kenya, and they're pushing things along out front. And Kosgei just joining them now on the inside. I have no idea who's going to win this, so it's going to be a very fun last 10K. But the real heat, I think, hasn't come on yet. But maybe there will be no more heat. Maybe it's just a case of who survives a 217 pace, maybe.
So you have a woman with a 214 PB in there, a 217 PB, a 218, a 219, and a 220. So it probably wouldn't be the five that you'd expect just based on PBs going in there. But they're all credentialed. Listen, 220 is still ridiculously fast. That puts you in very, very elite company. But there were other women who had quicker times in there. So Salpeter, Jepkosgei, Kosgei, Bakary, and Azamaro are the five that are left. Yeah, you'd think one person out of this group would get to sub 217, but maybe it's going to be that just war of attrition.
Sorry, more connection troubles, but yeah, we're obviously it's good. It's good. I think the broadcasters are doing a good job here. I think we complain so much as well about marathon coverages around the world, London, anywhere else as well. It's just always running fans are never happy, but I think they're doing a great job here in London of showing us the women's race at a key moment and just toggling back and forth between the women's race and the men's race and kind of covering any major moves. And I think this next like 5Ks is a point where we really do need to see a lot of the women's race, because one of these athletes is going to draw these athletes, is going to make a move. You would have to imagine Jeb Kosgei feels the freshest probably at the moment, because she's definitely doing the most work, but I don't know, she's got that forward lean and is very much just trying to damage her competitors here and run them out of her slipstream, but no
Yeah.
damage so far. And I mean, maybe we'll have 5 athletes go sub 217 here, which would just be ridiculous depth. That'd be really one for the statisticians. But
Yeah. Again, top five, best top five, Valencia 2019, 219, 28. I mean, I don't want to say anything's a sure thing. There's so much time left here, but they have to hold it together in the most generous terms, and they'll far exceed that. Because then you even go farther back. It's like, yeah, the people dropped off, but you have two people still at 3 sub 218 pace and two more at sub 219 pace.
yeah, for sure. And we see a shot there of Charlotte Purdue as well, who was I'm just going to actually check how she's doing, because she's a really interesting story. She was overlooked for selection on the British Olympic team in very controversial circumstances. And just check, she's through 30K in 141. So she's, what pace is she on with that? Getting a bit confused here with the split system, but yeah, she went through halfway in 71:44. So on that 223 pace, she could become the second fastest female marathoner of all time. She's targeting the time of 223 something as well by Mara Yamauchi, and she'd be behind only Paula on the British all-time list. But she, talking about taking that personally, and Michael Jordan quote, she, I think, could very much have justification for taking it personally, her omission from the Olympic team, because it was kind of a toss-up between her and Steph Twell to get that place on the British team. And they gave it to Steph Twell, who'd had all sorts of injury problems and had dropped out of London last fall. Purdue also had injury problems, but in the selection meeting for the British Olympic team, there was some false information provided, even though Purdue, her coach, had provided their training that they were doing, and someone in the British selection meeting had said that she was only running like 30 minutes a day, and she was actually back in full training in the spring when the decision was made. And she, I think, had to
Oh, wow.
show her GPS and her Strava and stuff, and say like someone at that meeting presented false information to say that I was only barely doing any training. So she said, and she was rightfully very, very angry about that. But Charlotte Purdue today is, I think, taking it out on the streets of London. And she said during the week to Sean Ingle in The Guardian in an interview, she said she basically it kind of spoiled, it tainted her motivation to ever run for Britain again. She will run for Britain, but she said it will feel different if I do because of how badly, I guess, I was screwed over by the selection. So good to see Charlotte Purdue running well, coached by the Australian coach Nick Bideau at the Melbourne Track Club, who's also coaching Sinead Diver, who's I think probably a minute or so back the road from Charlotte, her often training partner out in Australia when they go on camps together. We see a bit of Valerie Gemelli there trying her best to bridge that gap, but I think it's going to be, what do you think, Kevin? Too long a way back for Valerie Gemelli, given the class up front?
I think she could definitely still sneak her way into a top 3. I just think somebody from that group is going to be able to hold this pace, and that gap is going to be too big to close. All that talk about selection drama. If only there was a way to decide who the fastest people were in that you want to send to the Olympic. I don't know if you could get them all together maybe on like one day and like run a race.
In a way that puts so much writing on it and creates such heartbreak and scenes of tears of joy and cruelty that it becomes an incredibly powerful way to promote the sport. A way like
Yes.
that, perhaps, you know? Yeah, it
I
would be a great idea. If only there was an example the rest of the world could look to over in Britain and Ireland and elsewhere, but it appears there is none.
When you said presented Strava data at a meeting, I thought this is the strongest case for trials ever presented by anybody. What?
I agree.
What are we doing
Yeah,
here? It's sports. Here's my training
I
log.
know.
Come on.
And I think that was the problem. She didn't even get to present it. I think they just told her, what training are you doing? They told her, this is what I'm doing. Here's my last few weeks and stuff. And I think someone went into the meeting and said, oh, no, she's not fit. She's still injured. She's only jogging like 30 minutes a day or something, which was apparently completely false. So, yeah, drama. But you need a bit of, I know you make it so simple in the US. The rest of the world, we like to complicate things and think, oh, we don't have
Yeah.
the strength, so we have to allow a bit of leeway for our star athletes in case they have a head cold on the day of the trial or something. But
Yeah.
then, it inevitably leads to just bad decision makers, political decisions, and
Yeah.
all sorts of infighting. But again,
Yeah.
we have our own drama in this part of the world for that. On the Olympic build-up, we all get to row and there's blow-ups in the media and stuff. So it presents a different kind of drama, which we still
Yeah.
enjoy, but maybe not quite as much as the US trials.
They're showing on the graphic here the gap between Charlotte Purdue and the lead group, which if you're Charlotte Purdue, you love that graphic. The fact that they're showing that. If you had told her pre-race, there's gonna be a reason to show a graphic between the distance between you and the lead group. They'd be like, all right, I'll take that because they're probably running 2:16,
Yeah,
2:17.
and you're only 4 minutes behind through like 30K. So look, assuming she holds it together, she's going to be roughly 5 minutes behind at the finish. So you're talking in around the 2:23 mark. And she was talking quite confidently of running in and around that 2:23 mark, and that would be amazing, and that would be a fine signal to the selectors, I'm sure, um, to say thank you very much for
Yeah.
leaving me off the team. Look what I could have done if you picked me for Tokyo. Yeah, she said, I was reading an interview with her during the week. She said she went off to Font-Romeu in France during the Olympics, and she said the connection was so bad. Maybe the mountains of France are as bad as the mountains of Greece for bad Wi-Fi. But she said she watched the 800 meters, watched Keely Hodgkinson and the other British girls, but she said I think she watched a bit of the marathon back afterwards when she got home. But she said apart from
Hmm.
that, she didn't really see any of the Olympics, and she said she was not too upset about that because obviously the bitterness was still present in terms of and justifiable bitterness, really, given the situation. The
Yeah.
men's
So
race
we
looks like
got.
it's heating up here.
Yeah, I was gonna say we got the group now down to 5. So Kipchumba is still in there. Legesse is still in there. Lema, Ikiru in there as well. We'll get a check on who got dropped there. I think Garamu is still in there too. So is that Evans Chibet that got dropped? Oh no, sorry, Evans Chibet is there. So that would mean is it And then
And
that
that's
looks like Kipchumba in front. So maybe that is that Akiru that got dropped?
oh,
If anybody
perhaps,
know?
yeah. By
Yeah.
process of elimination, I think that would be Akiru then, yeah, because that's
Yep.
definitely Kipchumba in second, and that's definitely
Our
Lemma,
folks in the
yeah.
chat
So
letting us
one of
know. Thank you, folks in the chat, for letting us know. He pulled out. They said I don't know if that means he dropped out or just got dropped, but there goes my pick. Didn't even make it to the finish line.
mm, I'm glad I switched.
Yeah, good
Maybe
job. Good
Katata
job by
is
you.
going to come back come back and prove us all wrong. Yeah, I jumped off that sinking ship, that burning cutty shark, just in time before he dropped out. But yeah, my man Legacy is still in there, hopefully, to bring this home in that white vest back in third, I suppose, counting the pacemaker at the moment, even if our live results
Yeah.
section doesn't count the pacemakers. But great job from the pacer here. I mean, what is he now? An hour 20 into this race, and he
Yeah.
is very much keeping up a strong 202 pace here. So great job by him. And I'm sure, you kind of think sometimes with these guys, like, you're at 30K. How bad could you be feeling? It's only 12K to the finish. Keep going, man.
Yeah.
Obviously, it
Yeah.
doesn't work like that, but
So only in history, here's a list of people who've run sub 203. Kipchoge, Bekele, Legesse, Garamu, Kometo, and Titus Akiru. That's the group. So he was on a small list of sub 203s. Now, we get some more people joining that club today because right now we have still 5 guys left in this pack, um, who are all on pace as of 30K to run 202 mid too. So they have a little bit of breathing room here too, Cathal. It's not like they're sitting at 202.59 and they've been bumping up on every single split. Like their 202 mid has been the theme throughout.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, someone's going to blow up of it, obviously, but someone's going to hold this together, I think, and bring it home. And again, the fact the sun hasn't come out, I don't think you can underestimate that for how much that's going to help these athletes. Because obviously,
Mhm.
we said it was only like 12 or 13 degrees Celsius. It was a nice, cool day in the 50s Fahrenheit in London. But if that sun comes out in the sky, it just thermoregulation, all that, again, with my lack of physiology knowledge, my basic knowledge is that, any few degrees in
Thermoregulation.
temperature can really cause major issues in that last sort of 5 to 10 miles. So I think the fact it's still a cloudy day and a cool day in London, I mean, it must be close to perfect conditions. I'm sure the Breaking Two crew would probably be looking at this and going like, today would be a great day to pick for a project for a fast time. And we're certainly seeing that in boat races here, and we're seeing great depth. And it looks like Koskai is in trouble in the women's. We've got, I think it's
Yep.
Jep Koskai out front through 35K, and we've seen the first cracks in the champ. And we have not seen Bridget Koskai finish out of the first two in a marathon in many, many, many years. She was aiming for her third straight London Marathon victory today. It was 27 years since any woman won
Yeah.
London 3 times in a row. And we're seeing it, or that was back to Katrine Dore Heinig back in the 1994. She accomplished that. But I think it might be game over for Koskai. It's probably harsh to say game over already, but you don't lose 20, 30 meters at this point in the race unless you're in a serious bother at 35K.
Mhm.
2:17:23 is the current estimated pace for these women. And I mean, Jep Koskai, Kevin, we both picked her. It's looking
Yeah.
pretty good right now.
It's a lot of pressure for her. Thankfully, she did not hear that. Otherwise, she might have gone the way of Akiru. But yeah, 217 mid, and looks like coming off of this aid station, she really has formed a gap. I'll give it a little bit of time before I say this is definitive, because our rule here that we've established is don't read too much into how it looks when you go around an aid station. It could be just a momentary break. But I think it's obvious that the Kosgai is in serious trouble here, and Salpeter is back too as well. So that would leave Bakary and Azamiro, if these positions hold, as the two in the best position to try to chase down Jep Kosgai. But yeah, 217,
And like
23, still the finishing time, projected pace.
and And like we said earlier, it's so interesting. Like, 5 of the leading women, I think, on personal bests ran in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And the top 3 right now, Azamaru, Bakary, and Jep Koskai, all did not run the Olympic marathon. So we talked about that earlier, how we think it's going to be a big plus through this fall marathon season to not have run in Sapporo in the heat and humidity just 8 weeks ago. And I think even by the time in New York, I think it's still going to be a factor when it's like 11, 12
Yeah.
weeks ago. It's still just going to be not ideal for preparation. And I think right now, not that we want to count our chickens before they've hatched, but with 6, 7K to go, I think we're seeing the proof of that. The three athletes who are not preparing for that marathon in August and did not have to go through those horrible conditions in
Yep.
Sapporo are now to the fore here. And Jeb Koskai, I mean, we talked about the aid station, not want to read too much into it, but on the flip side, if you choose to attack at an aid station, it is definitely the best time to
Yeah.
attack because people are distracted. If you can get your final glug of energy drink in your hydrogel or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and then get on your way, it is a brilliant time because people are, and I think it's a tricky thing. Like I've never run a marathon, but I've tried drinking on the run, and it can kind of leave you a little breathless when you're already
Yeah.
breathless. And so it is a brilliant time to stage an attack when people aren't fully ready for it. And
Yeah.
Jep Koskai has done that now, and this is brilliant. And I think is it Bakary or Azamaru? I think it's Bakary who's trying to go with her. Salpeter is up into third. Um, so this is really interesting. The race is not done here. There's a lot of running left. We've got about 20 minutes of running left. And Jep
Yeah.
Koska is doing the classic thing there that any young coach will tell you not to do. Do not look around. Do not give
Yeah.
anyone any spirit or confidence. Just make them crush their spirit and crush their soul. And she's looking around an awful lot here. And if you were her manager, you would just say, put the head down, go forward, and do not give your rival any hope in behind you that you're hurting, because everyone's hurting at this point. But what do you think,
Yeah.
Kevin? Is this the race, or do you think she's going to be reeled back in again and we're going to see a sprint down the mall?
I think this is the race. I think we have a combination of two things, and we'll get confirmation on this when we get the next split. But I think this is Jeb Kosgei obviously putting a little bit of oomph into it. But I also think the back of this chase pack is falling apart a bit too. You could just tell like the body language and the form
Mm.
seems to be coming apart. Now you're looking at it in comparison to Jeb Kosgei, who looks really solid, but um, I think both those things are happening at once, and the move of the aid station was quite strategic. Yeah, I'm interested to see this next split here because you saw like Salpeter and Azamero kind of going back and forth. Like it looks completely discombobulated back there. I think everybody's just trying to find their bearings at this point after the move. But yeah, I think this is the Jep Koskei that we all thought would show up to this race. Full preparation, only in her third marathon. She was, she previous world record holder in the half. She'd run like intermediate world records like on the way, like 10, 20K and 15K records. So this is her, I think, fully realizing her potential as a marathoner if she can keep it together. And hey, I mean, 217.23 was the projection. I mean, Mary Katani's 217.01. It will be a stretch at this point. That women's only world record and the London course record. We'll get more clarity on that at 35K, but certainly not out of the question.
Certainly, and I think I'll just actually pull up these time bonuses and stuff, but it's certainly, if she runs, it's going to be in the hundreds of thousands what she earns today, and that's even just from the
Yeah,
London Marathon. Forget about what Adidas are going to give her. Forget about what her rolling contracts will be in the years ahead. It's going to be like in the
yeah.
hundreds of thousands if she can break that women's only world record. So obviously the race is not won yet. It's probably
Mhm.
40 meters back, maybe, to the two Ethiopians who are still working. It looks like they're working in tandem there and behind, and I think it's a good gap back to Salpeter. And I think Koskai is actually past Salpeter up to
Yeah,
fourth. So Koskai maybe back from the
yeah.
dead, up the challenge for second. Who knows what she's gotten this last few miles? But Jep Koskai does not look like she's stopping up front. Even if I was her coach, I would be like, stop looking around.
Yeah, go, 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 go at this point. I mean, you're right. We're looking at 17 more minutes or so of running here, and you got a good glimpse of, the head on is somewhat deceiving, but when they kind of make the turns, you can see, or when you have a blind kind of spot in the course, you can really see how big that gap is. Yeah, Salpeter looked to be in trouble. I think if anybody's going to mount a comeback, obviously, I think it's that 2 and 3 spot there with Bakary and Azamero. But yeah, this is impressive running from Jip Kosgei because she was up. I mean, she did some leading there for a bit too, and she was up there when the pacing got a little, uh, shall we say, confusing early on in the race. Like she was not afraid to put herself up there, but she's just running very confidently, and I think this unfolded perfectly because she's a two. You look at her PBs in the half, and you say, okay, 2:16 is possible for her. Yeah, she hadn't run that fast before, but New York doesn't really count in terms of finding a fast time. And then so she only had one crack at a fast marathon, and it was in Valencia. So it makes sense. It makes sense that she'd be able to handle a 2:17 pace.
Yeah, exactly. And we see her there running kind of down the hill. And as someone who's won in New York, you're certainly not going to be unduly bothered by the hills. But it's
Yeah.
obviously London is a relatively flat course. There's not too much. And it'll be interesting. Bekele obviously said one of the reasons, and Jos Herman said that he picked New York was that it's kind of like a cross country course on the roads, obviously given his cross country pedigree. And it'll be interesting to see with that extra 6 weeks to prepare how Bekele does in New York in a few weeks' time. But yeah, I guess today is all about London. And Kipchoge, I think that advantage grew to a certain length, and then perhaps just the two Ethiopians working together in behind has just kind of
Yeah.
meant it's become a little bit static, perhaps. And we get our first look at that. And again, great work by the broadcasters there. We saw everything we needed to see in the women's race, and now we've checked back in with the men's race, where nothing significant since has happened in the men's race, and you don't need to check just for the sake of checking. But we needed to see the last 5 minutes of what happened in that women's race,
Yeah.
and it's the perfect time. And as we see, it's still as we were in the men's race with Kipchoge out front.
Yep. Man, nobody in the rear after those five. This is it. So this is obviously the race here. If you're joining late, it's a Kipchumba, Chebet, Lemma, Garamu, and Legesse show here. What are they on pace wise? Let's see. Okay, we don't have we should be getting 35K pretty soon, right? 127 was the 30K. Oh, sorry, we just got 30K. Excuse me, at 127. So we have another
Yeah, it would be a bit.
10 minutes. Yeah.
But the 202 dream is still alive for 5 men, pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah.
5 men. That would be quite ridiculous. But I mean, someone has to blow. I mean,
Well,
it's incredible.
can the 5 men, do you think, go sub 204 at least, do you think?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, unless something crazy happens, but then again, the marathon is a bit crazy. Yeah, I think surely we're all going sub 204 here. I think that no one looks like they're really in great difficulty there, but someone's gonna. I mean, these are all, like we said, they're all such big names, but it's funny. They're the A-list stars of the marathon without being like the mega stars. They're not the Bekeles or Kipchoge. And
Yeah.
someone today, as the previews had written, someone's going to come in and make themselves a titan of the marathon today, because if you win London, you're one of,
Yeah.
if not the best marathoners in the world, one of the top three for sure, and probably the top two. So I think whoever wins this race is going to be the man, Kipchoge, to try to depose Kipchoge next year whenever they do meet.
Hmm.
As we see, a 4:46 last mile it was like, so they're still running a good pace, but that's certainly below the pace I suppose they probably would have been running before. But
Yeah.
again, there's often little drags uphill to go, so we're at the 20-mile marker anyway. And for that cliche we said earlier about the race starting here, maybe it's slightly more true in the men's race because it's down to the big five, I suppose. And again, well, we've obviously lost to Kiru, but the remaining big five, and Kipchumba looks like he fancies it
Yeah.
out front. Perhaps the rumors of his struggles recovering from an injury were greatly exaggerated.
Well, he has the slowest PB of the group, 2:05:09. He's not even in that bucket of guys I mentioned. I mean, his main claim to fame is finishing runner up last year in that we say tactical. I mean, certainly was a weather, difficult weather-wise marathon. But yeah, Kipchumba, that would be a story, man. Taking a couple minutes
Mm.
off his PB. Yeah. So remember, 2:03:30. There were 4 men, 2:03:30 or faster in Valencia. So we'll see if they can exceed that. They're running under the
So
tunnel
we're
here.
checking back in
Under
with
it
the
up.
women's race here. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Casca and Salpeter back in. That'll be fourth and
This is
fifth they're in at the moment. They're kind of toing and froing. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just to say, like, the number of lead changes between the two of them. I mean, I've only seen it a couple times, but it seems like every time you get a shot of those two, they're switching positions.
Yeah, we're into the last mile of the women's race, and I mean, yeah. Oh no, sorry, that
Four
was the last mile. That was the last mile. Is
456.
very much far. Wow.
456.
Okay, I think are we going to see a women's only world record here from Joycelyn Jepkosgei? I think
Let's see.
it's in the
I'm gonna
offing.
do
If she's running, we'll
I'm gonna do
try and
some
do some calculations here.
yeah, I'm gonna do 456 here and see what that translates to pace wise.
Could be
Uh
downhill, I suppose.
that's 209 pace.
Oh, that's pretty decent running for a woman. It's not bad.
So when
So
I
yeah,
when I
I
said,
mean,
"Hey,
you can
is this her going faster or the other people slowing down?" We got our answer. She's going faster.
big time, but she's not. She has opened a big advantage, and we can't quite see what Ethiopian that is of the two behind her. But it's kind of stayed. I mean, she doesn't look like she's slowing, so I can't imagine she's going to get caught here. Because yeah, it's in second and third. They're not going to pick up the pace if she keeps this going. She wins, but it's only 10 minutes to the finish now, and this is by far the biggest win of Jocelyn Jepkosgei's career. I mean, we saw her. We all but thought this was coming at one point when we saw her at 10K and half marathon, just absolutely
Yeah.
lighting it up 2, 3, 4 years ago. And then obviously that win in New York confirmed it. But I think even if you win a marathon major, if you don't run the time, this being such a numbers obsessed sport, until you run the time, people probably
Yeah.
don't fully rate you. But I think if Bridget Kosgei ever gets on the line, even in peak shape with Joycelyn Jepkosgei again, she is certainly going to be, even Perez Jepchirchir, the Olympic champion.
Yeah.
They're going to know all about Joycelyn Jepkosgei after today, because this is a domination of the best women's field in history.
What do you think her margin's going to be at 40K? Let's throw down a marker here.
Let's say I think she's probably like going to be 100 meters clear, I'd say, at 40K. So I would say about 20 seconds,
20 seconds.
maybe
All
more.
right.
Yeah, 18 to 20 seconds, I would say.
We're going to keep tabs on that. Is this
See how
Gemelli
wrong
that
I
they
am.
keep let's is this Gemelli they keep showing here? Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think
think
that's
it is.
Jameli. She's all alone, and yeah, I'm pretty sure
It's
that's her. Um,
sixth, yeah. She's doing the Shirakatada race here, although not from basically moment one like Mr. Katada was. Who's as of
you have to
30K,
respect it.
Cathal still plugging along, 206.33
I,
pace.
hats off to the guy. I mean, he's going to run a great marathon, and I think there's great credit to him as well, because like he didn't go with like Mark Scott's 210 pace, obviously, because he's the
Hmm.
defending champion, but also he had the
Yeah,
confidence, or the not confidence, but the awareness to go 61:20 or whatever at halfway is going to be stupid for me, given I've had this injury problem. He's like, I'm just going to run my own race, run 205, 206,
yeah,
pick some people off, and have a good day at the office, get my full appearance fee, pick up some nice prize money, fix my hamstring, come back in the spring and try and win one. And
yeah.
yeah, I was talking him into joining that meat hotel at halfway, and he has proved me wrong in a big way. So hats off to you, Shura Katada. You have
Yeah,
made a fool of me.
yeah. I mean, Jep guy is cruising here. That 456, man, that's stuck in my head. Just how impressive that was. So she was 153.57 at 35K. So let's see when her next
Wow.
split would be
She's
153. So yeah, we should be coming up soon here on. It's just weird when you orient yourselves around a certain time for women, and then for so many years, and then now you get a race like this where so many of them are going so fast. Like, wait a minute, when are they going to be passing through 40K? Because this is normally the marker, and it's just so incredible. I mean, you
I
got to
know.
put cost guys 214 aside for a moment in that discussion, but it's just everything is being rewritten as we speak.
Definitely. I mean, Jepkosgei, and just I've had a little check on the cash situation, because it's always entertaining to see how much cash she's going to get. So it's
Mhm.
55,000 for the win. Any runner under 217.30 gets $150,000.
Okay,
So
well,
that alone. Now they're not cumulative. A world record is first and women's world record is $125,000. Um, I have to imagine she's going to get that plus the 217.30 bonus then, because it's better
Yeah,
than that. So she must be getting 150 plus 125. So we're talking 375,000, or sorry, 275,000 off the race
yeah,
alone in US dollars. Plus, I'm sure the good folk at Adidas and Spencer Nell will be putting much deeper in their pocket with a nice bonus for a world record. And I think World Athletics, did they give a world record bonus as well?
yeah.
They do.
I
They
think
do it on the
so.
track. But
Did that
yeah,
include
either
the
way, big
that
money
include
coming the way of Jocelyn Jepkosgei today.
did that include the winning that you said 55,000 for winning? Did you include that as well too?
Yeah, it says
Mhm.
first and women's world record is 125,000. So I'm assuming that's
Oh, I
probably
see. Okay.
counting both the prize money, perhaps. But yeah,
Okay.
very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Oh no, sorry, that's an additional bonus as well, because there's a
Mhm.
first and women's course record as well. That's 25,000. So she's getting 125, 55. That's 180 plus 150. She's getting 330 off the London Marathon today. A nice 2 hours work, a tough 2 hours
So
work for Jocelyn Jepkosgei.
so we just got the split. She's gonna have to really work the last 2K because she's still at 2:17:29 pace. Your prediction of you said 20 seconds back, 14 seconds back. So not bad. I'll give you credit for that. That's pretty good.
Pretty
It's
far
pretty
away.
solid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe we jumped the gun a bit on the 300,000, but it's still going to be
Still a
I
lot.
guess she can still get that course record, 125,000 for the course record. Or oh, sorry, that's Mary
It's the
Katani's as
same.
well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same one. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They could have saved their
Okay.
money and or saved their time and just said, if you run faster than Mary Katani did, you get this. But
Yeah,
I mean the time
exactly.
bonus though for the sub. I mean she's gonna
Yeah,
be sub
150,000.
yeah sub two. Is that for sub 218?
Yeah. I think it's, wait, I've lost it again. I need to pull this up. Where did it go? Um,
Well, Azamiru
Sub 217.30 is 150,000. Sub
Oh
218
wow.
is 100,000. So she is right on the borderline
Yes.
of a $50,000 1 or 2 seconds difference here in this final few K. So this will be really interesting. And I hope she knows. I hope she has some idea, perhaps through her watch or the lead pace car, of just what's on the line here. I mean, she's going to be late either way. She's beaten the world's best marathoners. Probably Perez
Yeah.
Jepchirchir is the only one really who's missing here in terms of like
Yep.
obviously with Molly Seidel and some other Olympic contenders as well. But in terms of pure times, pretty much everyone is here. And Jocelyn Jepkosgei has run them all into the ground, coming to the last couple of K along the embankment. Men's race is still, again, Kevin, no idea what's going to happen here. This could be a sprint
No.
finish again.
No. So they're at the clock's 143. So they went through 35K at 142.18. Projected finish, the top five are all, I mean, together still right at 203.20. 203.20. So this is good. This is shaping up to look an awful lot like that Valencia race where it was 203.30, which was the marker where you had four men going to 203.30. So they have a chance to exceed that here with five guys still in it. Still in it.
I love I love a marathon sprint finish. Don't you? Like, it's great.
Oh yeah.
And New York has it. Like, was it Martin
Hmm.
Lell or was it Hendrik Ramala had a great one? Was it with Paul Turgat years ago? And I
Hmm.
mean, some of those, like, I know it wasn't quite a sprint finish, but Sammy Wanjiru versus Tsegai Kebede as well in Chicago in around
Yeah.
2010 or so. It was one of the best marathons ever. I mean, there's just nothing like it. It looks like it's going to be a solo run to the finish for Jepkosgei in the women's race, which is brilliant in its own right, the way she's run the race. But I think the men's is
Hmm.
going to have lasting intrigue, I suppose, because I think it's very hard to see anyone in that group really breaking the others before the last mile, given there's such a pack together now coming into
Yeah.
the last 4 or 5 miles or so. But I think Jepkosgei is home and hose at this point. What is that? Probably 400 meters to go? No, more. A
Yeah. I
little
think
bit
it's
more,
like
probably half a mile.
well, and credit to Azamiru, who's hanging in there really well in second. She came in with a 2:19.26 PB, was the Amsterdam champ, but she is keeping this thing uh still competitive. I mean, 15 seconds back on someone after they dropped to 4:56. I mean, talk about absorbing a blow there. Like she I don't think she's gonna win because Jepkosgei looks too solid, but after that initial move, she really steadied herself and is going to get just this massive PB and this big time bonus and going to go sub 218. So yeah, we'll
Yeah, and
see.
she's, I guess it's harsh to say she was in the B list when you're a 219 athlete, but like, in
Yeah,
terms of the uber elite of female marathoning, she wasn't quite in that upper echelon, but Asa Maru is currently just moving straight in there now with a 218 and a second in London today. So she's going to be like hot property for any like race director and manager trying to get her to the world's best marathons next year. Like everyone will want Digitu Azamaru on the line. 600 meters to go. Jeb Kosgei, she's hurting, but I think even when she's running fresh, she kind of has that style that looks like she's kind of like almost leaning forward so much. And
yeah,
it would be fully understandable at this point. She's still looking around.
yeah.
I
She
wish she
doesn't need to
wouldn't, but I
look.
think she's got enough of a lead at this point. And I guess, I mean, you couldn't say a new star is born at the marathon because she's already won New York. We knew how good she was, but I think she is reaffirming just what a bright star she will be now and for the years ahead to get Jeb Kosgei. But as a Maru, is she closing down that gap a little? It's going to be too late
Looks
even if she does, but she's definitely reeling. Looks like it's a little bit closer.
inside 400. Yeah, I thought the same thing. Although now, after they go off the curve, you get a perspective of just how big that gap is. Jeff Kosgei is gonna win this thing. Looks tired, obviously. 456 is gonna do that to you in the midst of a race where you're already running 217 pace. The only question here is the time. We're gonna get something in the 217s. You mentioned 217 to 30, a dividing line for the bonus. We'll see if she's on the outside of it, and then we're gonna watch just to see how deep this marathon is. But Jocelyn Jepkosgei is going to win
Yeah, she's
her
gonna
second marathon major.
Yeah, she's going to get the 218 bonus. She's inside that 200 to go from that last bend, but she's not going to get the 217.30. So it's only $100,000 time bonus, 55,000 for the win. But most importantly, the champ Jocelyn Jepkosgei has run them into the ground, and this is impressive. She is. This won't be her last marathon major victory. I think we can say that with some certainty. Jocelyn Jepkosgei, 217.42 unofficial across the line.
Mm-hmm.
And she looks as fresh as a daisy. And now she can finally take a good look around and see at all the athletes she has run into the ground. Um, Wearing the arm warmers today, chilly day in London, and Digitu Azamaru second, dips under 218 as well. Brilliant from
Yeah,
her. And I think everyone gets a time bonus, don't they? So I think she's
correct.
just got herself 100,000 as well.
Yep,
That is a
yep.
nice second place finish for Azamaru. And is Bekere coming through? Asheti Bekere in third here. It's going to be under 218.30, 218.17 or so.
Yep.
Delighted with that.
Yeah,
So again, top three, Kevin, non-Olympians this year.
hey, I think you formulated your narrative. I think you put your flag. It's going to be about the the non-Olympians. Here is an Olympian, Bridget Kosgei, silver medal. Should be about 218.38 and change. And then another Olympian here, Salpeter, is going to go and run. Let's see, right. Oh, she's going to go under 219 as well too. So that'll put. Oh, she barely crosses the line there, Salpeter. She looks like
Oh,
she's
and just to
in a
remind
lot of
everyone,
duress there.
barely getting under 219 means 75,000 big ones in the bank.
Yeah.
So yeah, worth every little bit of sprint she got out of those legs in that last. But yeah, Jeb Kosgei, brilliant stuff from her. It'll be a very nice payday north of 200,000 today. Or no, well, no, it'll be close to 155,000 anyway, and lots more to come, and lots more appearance fees await for her next year. And it'll be great to see her. I'm sure she'll be featuring at the next Olympics in Paris. And I think she's kind of a championship style marathon runner as well. She's a good, like, her 10K half marathon pace. If
Yeah.
they jogged to halfway, I think Jocelyn Jepkosgei would be a very, very dangerous athlete against anyone really coming home. She's kind of got that
Well,
short speed as well.
she's already won in New York, right? And it's interesting. You see somebody go and to do the two extremes of marathoning, like in their first couple. I mean, that's not it's not unheard of, but a lot of people get into the New York or sorry, the Berlin, London pattern or the London Chicago pattern. But she's showing that she can do it. in championship style racing and in flat and fast racing. So we have the top 5 under 219, 218.54. So that's the that's the first time top 5 has been under 219 in history, Cathal. The previous best 5th place finish, Valencia 2019. As I mentioned, 5th place there was 219.28, and they had 4 under 219. But this is the first ever with 5 under 219.
Wow, that is ridiculous. I guess we teed it up as the best ever. The statisticians will be having a field day with the depth level in the women's race. And I think I guess the men's is probably, they look like they're fooling around, for want of a better word. It's still obviously going to be pretty quick, but I think the women's will probably be winning the day in terms of fast times and depth, perhaps a little, in terms of making a bit of history. Because I think they're kind of, yeah, I think this is the classic thing now where no one really wants to push this along, do they? Even though there are those juicy time bonuses, I think they're thinking of victory more so. But Lemma has come through, puts himself up to the fore. We haven't seen much of him at the front so far, but 2:03.36, and he is a guy who ran at the Olympics, but conveniently he dropped out. So surely didn't leave himself too much lasting damage. But again, if you've prepared for an Olympics, that's probably going to, you haven't put in a training block specifically for the London Marathon. You're trying to just, I suppose, hang on to your fitness. So it's not ideal, but I think definitely not finishing the Olympic marathon will be a bonus in terms of the effect it's taken on your body. But here is Lemma appearing at the front in the closing miles when it matters most. And I think maybe just when they were looking around at each other a little bit there, it looks like Lemma has just injected a little bit of pace, or at least brought it back to where they were maybe. As we see Charlotte Purdue is into the last 400. This is going to be a brilliant performance from her. It's 2:23 she's headed for. I'll just look up that Mari Yamauchi time.
Yeah, Purdue putting everything in on this last stretch. You're right, running with that desire to prove something after what happened the past summer and pumping those arms wildly. Where's this mark gonna stack up all time here for Purdue, Cathal?
I know she's been she was going for I'll just check the time. I know it was 2:23 is the second. Yeah, so 2:23.12 is Mari Yamauchi's best time. And that is the second. I think she's just going to miss it, or is she? This is going to be so close. So Mari Yamauchi is the second fastest Briton ever for British on the female side at 2:23.12. That's the mark Purdue said she was going for. I think she's third fastest. She wants to go second. She's got 2 seconds to get to the line, depending on the chip and electronic time. And this is going to be heartbreaking. She's going to be 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. But that is that's a big personal best. That's a 2-minute personal best for Charlotte Purdue. And as we said about Michael Jordan, I took that personally. She took that Olympic snub personally. And it is great to see Charlotte Purdue. 2:25.38 was her personal best before. So she has obliterated that. And Charlotte Purdue, she's third fastest Briton of all time. But big future ahead for her. Brilliant run. Well done to her. And indeed her coach, Nick Bideau.
I think that'll put Purdue in 10th. I'm still waiting on the official. Oh, there it is. Great job from producer Colt there. Charlotte Purdue in 10th, just behind Girma. So after you had that top 5, the drop-off was really between 5 and 6, Cathal, because you had Salpeter at 2:18.54 and then Gemelli 2:20.35. So there was a minute and 40 seconds between those two. But those 5 make history going under 2:19 as we're back on the men's race. I do want to say, I just looked at Twitter. Statman John Mulkeen tweeted the same stat about the same time I said it. Now people can go back and match the time codes just to see. I'm not saying I'm on the stat level of John Mulkeen. In fact, I'm far from it. But if I can sniff greatness, for a moment, I'll take it.
I think Statman John is stealing all his work from you, to be honest, Kevin. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think his whole Twitter popularity is based on stealing your work, your good work and your research. Disgraceful. But Lemma, we gotta move. Lemma is laying it down here to Kipchoge. And who's that around there?
That's Garamu, I believe, in the orange, correct?
Yes, that must be Geramu. Yeah, because Legacy was wearing white, so that's Geramu coming around. Finished second before, might do so
Holy.
again. But Lemma, it looks like an Ethiopian 1-2 we're headed for here. Kipchumba looks like he doesn't have much left to offer. They're going to ruin my sprint finish I had planned. This was going to be great, but
Yeah.
Lemma has decided no more. Cisse Lemma, third in Berlin back in 2019. What else he won?
Hmm.
Won third in Tokyo last year, third in London last year, and he's only ever won smaller marathons, but obviously not too
Yeah.
small. Frankfurt, he's won Vienna, he's won Warsaw, so he's a heavy hitter at the kind of slightly B level marathons, and now he's up in the A race and 3 third place finishes in majors before. It looks like he's gone two
This is
places
a
better than that today.
Yeah, this is a strong acceleration here from Lemma. Right now, better close, Lemma or your Wi-Fi? Which close stronger?
I'm betting on Lemma strong,
Okay.
given my experiences with the Greek Wi-Fi. I'm all over
I should
Lemma
not have
here.
jinxed it.
He's definitely.
I apologize.
Now look, we've done all right the last 15 minutes. It's just, things are going pretty smooth.
Oh,
Let's not talk about the Wi-Fi issues. But
I
yeah,
shouldn't have said
Lemma's
it. I
home
jinxed
here,
it.
isn't he? Is it gone?
Well,
Have I gone already?
150. No, you're
Failing.
good. You're good. I was joking. 156 on the clock. So we got what, 7 minutes, 6, 7 minutes left of running. Uh, no, it's not over yet. It's not over yet. I'm not saying it's over yet.
Oh, we've
Now,
got him through 40K there at he's on 203.53 pace, so they've slowed quite a good bit looking at each other
mhm,
in that kind of 5K section, but Lemma has definitely picked
yeah,
it up again. Um, he's got 10 seconds on Kipchumba and Geramu through 40K. They're pretty much
yeah,
Kipchumba's coming back. Sprint finish memories of last year are going to be coming back to him. He won't want to lose 2 sprint finishes in a row, but at the moment, that's going to be a fight for second because Lemma's not stopping here, is he? This is going to be a very fast last 2K. He's doing what Chip Koska was doing and looking around, but it'll be good news he sees when he looks around because, yeah,
yeah.
he's not getting caught here.
You don't think, huh? No chance? No chance. All
No
right.
chance. I'm laying it on the line
Okay.
here, Kevin. No chance. None.
After
Surely not.
you're buoyed by your pick of Jocelyn Jepkosgei. Although Legesse is
No,
I don't
he's
know, man.
going
I'm
down
trying
in
to get
flames
these.
here.
Yeah. So yeah,
Legacy.
so
Yeah,
they slowed him.
Legacy has blown badly. He's still in fourth.
Yeah.
So he's the next one after that, but he's what is he, 37 seconds now behind Lemme when that happened in a short enough period, and Evans Chibet is just behind him in fifth. So they'll be
Well,
fighting it out for fourth. But yeah, neither of us got a top three man in the men's race. And I suppose we said the men's race would be a lottery. That's the case.
you you mentioned before about they were looking around at each other. It almost looked like the third lap of a 1500 or that middle mile on the 5K. And I think Lemma's acceleration is evidence of that. Clearly, he was holding something back here. He was saving something. He was comfortable with letting it go to a fast finish, but he didn't want it to be the last 400-meter burn up or last 800. He wanted to do it from a little farther out. But yeah, I think the times are going to be a bit misleading at the finish because I think there was that little pause there where they went basically from, I mean, they were at what, 202 mid pace to 203 mid pace. They lost about a minute. Won't matter for Lemma if he gets this win, but I think there was a little bit of strategic decision making over that last stretch.
I think so, yeah. And it probably makes sense overall, if you're going to be going for that win, obviously you might spend that 50,000 extra time bonus, but you'll forever be a London Marathon champion. And that has
Yeah,
huge,
yeah.
huge value in itself with the shoe contracts and any other marathons you go to in the years ahead. But yeah, Lemma, it's going to be his first big one. He's finished fourth in Berlin, fourth in Chicago, and as I said, third in Berlin and Tokyo before. But this is his first big one, really big one. He's won Vienna, he's won Frankfurt, but Lemma, this is the ultimate, I suppose, the hardest marathon to win in the world, and Cisse Lemma is going to make a name for himself. And it's very impressive. Like you said, in terms of the time in the modern era, we're not going to be like shouting about the time or blown away by it, given it's going to be mid 203, I would estimate, by the time he gets to the line.
Hmm.
But inherently, this is a 202 level performance. If he'd run it consistently, he would certainly be in the 202s because look at the way he is skipping off the ground there with every step. He
Yeah.
looks like he kind of runs almost like an 8 or 1500-meter runner, doesn't he? He's got like great
Hmm.
bounce.
Hmm.
It kind of is Kipchoge-esque the way he springs off the road there. And I remember sub 204 will net him an additional 75,000 in prize money if he can. 203 would be 100,000. But yeah, so there's plenty left to run for, even though he appears to have the win in the bag. He'll be thinking, right, extra 75K, please.
30 years old, has won marathons before, but this would be his first major. Third in London last year, just going through his resume. And he ran in Sapporo, just didn't finish.
Yeah, and I'm not sure when he dropped out in Sapporo, but the Ethiopians had not a very good day at the office
No,
in
no.
in Ethiopia, I think, and I think as well, they all go out to win a medal for the homeland and that, and understandably, but I think once the medal slips out of reach and they know it's not
Yeah,
happening, we traditionally see with full justification, I suppose, the Ethiopians and Kenyans particularly tend to just step off the course and
yeah,
think, right, I can get a big payday at a marathon a month down the line. Why would I fry my system and scupper those chances? And I think a lot of people we have seen who did get to the line
yeah,
in tough circumstances did perhaps surrender their true chance of winning London. But I guess both options are understandable given the reasons behind them. But this is highly impressive for a man who, up until 8 weeks ago, was only preparing for the Olympics and then changed course and decided to come to London, or I guess decided to start training for London. I suppose
yeah,
he always knew he was coming here.
yeah. And I'm going to join you in the Lemma optimism here. I just saw how big that gap was. This thing is over. Probably been over for him to run away with this thing. Just complete confidence. Uh, I just what's that? Oh,
He,
600 to go. Yeah, this thing is cooked. It's over.
yeah, it's done. They're up they're up 17 points in at the 2 minute warning. Like that's what we're looking at here. This can't be
Oh, a
turned
football
around for
reference.
Kipchumba or Geramu. Yeah,
I like
well,
it.
it's football season. Oh, I like
Gotta
this
know.
camera they've got going alongside.
Wow, look at
Look at
this.
this thing.
Lemma versus
I've
the
never seen
mobile
it.
cam.
What's funny is that they're not really showing us footage from that, but we're seeing that being used. Maybe someone's making a documentary or something. But that's an interesting place to have a little mobile cam and some sort of robot drone. But
Yeah,
Lemma's, what's this? I think this turn is around 400 meters to go. It's like the second
yeah.
last right hand turn. So yeah, he's going to be, what will his last
Oh,
400 be? 63 seconds or something, probably 64
yeah,
seconds, maybe. Surely a kick finish, but yeah, he's got less than 400 to go, so he's gonna go under 204, right? Yeah. Once he gets
yeah,
fully into the home straight, it's 200 to go. So 30 seconds, you could say, for the home straight. It's gonna be close all the same. And remember, if he
yeah.
doesn't break 204, it's $25,000 difference. The difference between 50,000 bonus and 75,000 bonus. So 200 meters to go, Cecile Lemma. You better run
Got
it
a
in
kick.
30 seconds or so, or you're going to cost
Got
yourself 25K on that prize money.
get ready to lean. Get ready to lean, Sisse. You need to get that prize money. You got to get under 204, a bonus money. Oh, he's waving. Oh
Oh,
no,
he's
keep
celebrating.
going.
He's waving. Sisse, someone
Oh,
needs
no.
to tell him, you got to put the boot down here, brother. Push
25K.
on.
Come on,
Go for it.
Sisse.
8
Come on.
seconds. This is
Oh
worth
no.
75 grand.
Oh wow, is he
Lean,
gonna?
my man.
Oh,
Lean. Arms out.
oh.
Oh, how disappointing. As he wins the London Marathon. No, we're trolling, of course. Cisse Lemma, the champ. What a performance by him. It's going to
Yeah.
be, I mean, those chip times, gun times, often they're a little bit misleading. We'll get the official time. It might be 203. You'll get a
No,
75K bonus if it is. No?
204.01. We're just putting him up on the screen now. 204.01. Missed it. Just missed it. Kipchumba second.
Waving to the crowd.
204. I mean, he
But you
had
know
it in
what?
him. He had it in him.
Like we said, at one point in his career, he'll look back and say, "Okay, I would have spent that 25,000 on something anyway." But I'll
Yeah.
always have the memory of looking to those fans and just waving to them and going, "What's
Yeah.
up? I'm
Yeah.
the champ."
Yeah.
And that's a memory that you can't put a price on. So he enjoyed his last 100. Hats off,
Yeah.
Cisse. He's the champ. Kipchumba didn't lose any sprint finish this year. Got the silver. Well, there is no silver, but he got second.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think. This is just an impressive. Just you look at Lemma's whole career, just like all those years running minor marathons, sometimes 3 in a year, and getting close in some majors, but never being the guy atop the podium. Just a story of persistence paying off for Lemma. And I know you mentioned before, hey, the people who show well here are going to be the ones that can challenge Kipchoge, but it wasn't a young upstart that did it. It was somebody who's been on the scene for a while now. Does that change your opinion about what the London Marathon or champion in 2021 means?
Maybe a little, I guess. Yeah, he's kind of been around, I suppose, but he's definitely got to a new level now. I think just by dint of that
Hmm.
performance. I mean, the people he's beaten in behind him, just he's definitely reached a new level. And like we said, it is 2:04:01. Time is ultimately, I suppose, a bit forgettable. It's kind of run of the mill these days, a 2:04
Yeah.
major marathon, but we know he can definitely break his personal best at 2:03:36. And like if he was running a Berlin type race with even pacing on a good day, he's definitely a caliber athlete to run 2:02.
Hmm.
Kipchoge obviously is down to 2:01s, but who knows how long more Kipchoge can stay at that level. I mean, like we said, he's getting on in years. He's been ruling for so long. One of these days, I do think London last year was a complete anomaly because of the rain. It messed him up.
Yeah.
And there's our man Kitata coming
Katana.
for home as we
Katana.
speak. The guy we
Still
talked, well, you didn't talk any crap. I talked a lot of crap about Kitata
banging
unjustifiably. He
away.
is the,
He's
I,
banging
I
away.
thought he was never going to get it, but he is getting his full appearance fee and he's going to pick up a bit of prize money as well, I think.
He
What place is
definitely
he coming in? Is this
passed
seventh?
sixth, I think. I think it's sixth or seventh. He definitely
Sixth place.
passed. Yeah, he passed at least somebody from that. Oh, because Ikiru dropped out. That's right. Man,
Ah,
this thing went
yes.
to form in terms of the people who were expected to, that top tier. Like the top tier just held. It wasn't in the order we thought it was going to be necessarily, but
Yeah.
those gaps existed for a reason, I guess.
Yeah, and like we said, you finish the race, you get your full appearance fee. So Katata did not jump into his hotel at the halfway mark, and for
No.
sixth place, he'll get $7,500 of prize money. So it'll be a nice payday for sure, Katata, and off a very interrupted preparation with that hamstring, and sensibly, I think, deciding not to go with the pace in the opening 5K and running his own race. He's going to come down with a sub 2:08, and he'll be a much better athlete, sure, Katata. He is a class athlete when he's at his best. He's not at his best today, but he'll be back next year. But brave as always, Shura Kitata, 2:07:50 or so across the line. Great work from him as that strapping on his knee, whatever about the hamstring problem he had, he talked about. He said he couldn't
Yeah.
sprint fully with the hamstring. Look at him, he's still running as well.
Jogging around a little bit. Any bonus money for sub 208? They have that on the price
No,
structure at
only
all?
sub 2:05. Only sub 2:05 is the bonus money. So yeah, I think the super shoes they probably said no. If we give 2:08 money to
Yeah.
people, we're going to be broke. Um, but yeah, impressive stuff. It's
Ran by
interesting with all the
himself,
COVID
basically
protocols. It's good to see. Yeah,
the entire way. I mean, that was a long way. If you were to give DNF odds in this race or any marathon
oh
race, sure, Katata's at about 2 miles would have been off the
yeah,
books, basically.
yeah, totally, absolutely. I mean, I was calling him a dead man walking after like 2K, and he proved
Yeah,
me
you
wrong.
should have. Yes, you were 100% right. I mean, you
I
took
was just
how he
like, he
looked,
wants.
how fast the pack was going, and you took what he said in the press conference, and you put all those three things together. Of course, it looked like he was gonna
Yeah.
not even make it to the meat hotel.
But yeah, we've got a. Is this Ben Connor? Or, I'll check the leading Brits here. Or Johnny Miller, last year's British champion. Obviously, the hosts always get quite a good bit of coverage, and I'm not. That's not. I'm not sure who that is at the moment, but we've seen some shots of the
Sesame.
leading.
Is it Philip Sesame?
Ah, yes, Phil Sessamon. Yeah, that's him. So we'll try and do a bit of reading here on
He
how
was
what he's looking for.
so 40K at 40K. He's about 5 minutes back of Kitata. So assuming
Okay.
he'll be, he's going to be outside of 210, obviously, as people can see on the screen, which means no. I don't know if, yeah, Griffiths was the next one from Great Britain, and I wonder if I don't think Woodfin either DNF'd or obviously fell off the pace. Johnny Mellor in 30K was on 215 pace.
Okay. It's always interesting seeing the, I guess, the races within a races as well. But it
Hmm.
looks like a good day at the office for Sesame anyway. And our Canadian record attempt didn't come off anyway.
Right. Correct. Yeah. I'm also
Yeah.
keeping tabs on Flanagan in the mass race here.
Oh
She's
yeah, how's she doing?
through 35K. It says predicted finish through 35K, 2:30:15.
Wow.
So I'm wondering where she would have finished in the elite field because, well, Purdue was 2:23. Let's see if we get everybody. Ah, here we
Interesting.
go.
Uh,
2:30 would be 16th. So it went Purdue in 10th, Berhane Debaba in 11th, uh, Diver, as you mentioned before, in 12th, Murgetu in 13th, Wellings in 14th, Rose Harvey in 15th at 2:29:45. So those were the ones under 2:30.
That is some running from Shalane Flanagan to be in there amongst it after coming off Berlin last week. And I'm sure a
Talk about
very
underselling yourself.
unprofessional. Yeah, I know, totally. And then she's just surprising us all here. This is debut marathon for Sesaman, so a highly impressive one. He's run 65 so far for the half. Um,
Mhm.
good track runner as well, 13:45 and 7:51 for 3K, so 3:40 for 1500. So just, what, 30 times over his 340, 1500 meters. The
Right,
distance he
right.
was running like 2 or 3 years ago. Phil Sessamon, 28 years old, is going to win the British title by the looks of things. Well done to him, the Leeds City athlete. Impressive stuff. And we might get some, maybe some of these, once these British elites have finished, we might get a shot of Shalane perhaps. Maybe the broadcasters have sent a camera out there. But
Yeah.
yeah, that is very impressive. Do you think she's going to keep trying to run 2:30s though? Do you think that's going to be foolish if she tries to do it in Boston and Chicago?
I think that would be the one where she would dial it back and then just because
Mm,
she was looking for a sixth marathon too because Tokyo got canceled.
mm.
So if she just stays at 5, then maybe she really cuts loose for New York on that last one and
Yeah,
really
but I think
goes
she's
for
I
it.
think she's going to do it virtually. I think the sixth one because I think of Tokyo. I think that's the plan, maybe,
Okay.
but maybe
See,
not.
here's what I would do. Here's what I would do. And far be it for me to give advice to one of the greatest marathoners of all time. I would scrap that one and be like, screw it. I'm running 2:30s and just chill. Let's just go all in on New York. Let's make this a stealth comeback. It was a comeback disguised as this gimmick. And then let's just go out in New York and just crush it with everything you have left. Still uphold your
What
end of
if
the
it
bargain
was? What if it
and
was
run.
and she just didn't tell anyone all along? And these were just like, instead of like 18 and 22 mile and 20 mile long runs, she just said, I'm just going to run them in public and I'm going to make them 26 mile long runs. And maybe she's run 100 miles already this week and this is just all part of the
Yes.
plan. And she's going to show up in New York in 2:19 shape.
Yes.
I think we've
100%. This is what
discovered
I want.
we've we've discovered something this morning. We know what you're
Listen,
up to, Shalane.
if it was me at this point, I'd be like, all right, I've seen enough. Let's just rest up and then go all in on New York. But she's got a plan. So you uphold your end of the bargain. You do the Chicago and Boston back to back. But I didn't think, I mean, I was optimistic. I didn't think she'd go out the gate with a 2:36 and a 2:30. That's way
It
beyond
is,
what I thought.
yeah, it's wild. Um, it was who was it? Philip Sessamon, 2:12:58. He won the British title. Josh Griffith second, 2:13. Um, yeah, let's have a look for Shalane now. See how she's can't be far, but you'd have to imagine, right? If she's in 2:30 shape in London,
Yeah.
give her another, what is it, 5 weeks to New York, taper,
Yeah.
forget about the others, actually
Hmm.
specifically focus. And obviously, having come through these two experiences, they're going to bring her fitness on and learned how to suffer, I suppose, as she used to suffer a couple of years ago. Then
Right.
surely she's going to be in like 2:25 or 2:26 shape. And it's actually going to be like, okay, she's not going to be on the podium, but like she goes to New York, she could be like suddenly
Yeah.
sixth place, or there's Shalane Flanagan, and with no pacemakers as well, it'd be like there's Shalane Flanagan at 10 miles in the lead pack,
Sure.
having already run 3 marathons this
This
season.
one. So the I'm looking at the field for London or for New York. Actually, let me see. I think it has. Well, the Americans. Oh, Jeff Churchill is going to be in New York, and then Molly
Oh
Seidel
yeah,
for the U.S. Kipchoge, Tuliamuk, Sisson, Linden. It's a good American field. Obviously, Jeff Churchill is the favorite coming off the gold medal.
of course, surely. I just see that they have Shalane in the mass group, but then they also have in the
Yep.
celebrity group. I wonder if she's the leading celebrity.
Oh,
Surely, there's surely
what are you
no
famous
celebrity
for?
faster than 2:30.
What are you famous for? Running marathons really fast. And what are you doing? Oh, I'm
There's a
running a
good
marathon right now.
Gordon Ramsay always runs the London Marathon, but I think he's more in the 3:30 4 hour category. There's a really good chef actually, Michel Roux, who's I don't know, he's probably not famous in the US, but he's huge in like Britain and Ireland, and he's a
Mhm.
French guy, and he's actually a really good marathoner as well. I think he runs like two. I wonder, he often runs London, so maybe he's pipped Shalane in the celebrity category
So
this
we
year.
got yeah. So as at 30, what's this 30 at 35K, she was up 6 minutes on the closest mass race participant for the women.
That must be so.
So
It must be so cool though.
she's clearly better than uh, the mass races. That's been established here. Oh, someone
We
mentions
need
in
a
the
new category, like legends who are retired but not that long retired.
well,
Runners who
it's
are legends who are trying different stuff at the moment,
it's like
transitioning
when
to
someone
retirement.
yeah, it's like when someone sets a master's record and it's like, well, you're still like at the elite level. Like when Bernard Lagat was breaking masters records while he was just regular Bernard Lagat competing in like Olympic trials finals. It's the same. It's like how I feel about Flanagan in a celebrity sense. Yeah, she classified as celebrity, but it's like you're still competing at the high level. Or like when you show up for the media 800 at the World Championships and run like 155. It's just not fair, is what I'm saying.
It's all I have in my life, Kevin. But it's funny you mentioned Lagat because if there is anyone out there watching who runs marathons, I remember talking to Lagat. I interviewed him before, I think he's in New York, probably 3 years ago or so. He ran New York, and he said he actually called Shalane and asked her for advice about the marathon. And
Yeah.
her advice was in the first half, don't think. And Lagat was like, what do you mean? Like, she was like, just switch off your brain. She was like, try not to think about what's happening. Just try to almost like sleepwalk through the first half, because she said, trust me, you're going to need all your mental energy and obviously emotional energy and everything in the second half to concentrate on what you're doing. And she was like, if you're concentrating really hard the first half, you'll almost use that up and stuff. So she was just like, just get through it, switch off your brain. I've said that to a few people since who've run a marathon, some friends of mine. I'm just like,
Yeah.
right, this is what Shalane says the first half. Just don't think, save it. But
Yeah.
yeah, good advice from
Well,
the Queen of New York once upon a time.
it makes sense. And if she runs all 6 marathons this fall, she's going to be doing a lot of shutting off her brain the first half. Another view of that beautiful clipper ship, the Cutty Sark.
Yeah, the
Just I can never get
glorious
enough of
Cuddy
it.
Sark. The sun is out now, though. That guy in that, what is that, an armadillo? It's a rhino costume. That's going to be a long way around for him. Um, that'll be upsetting for him and him carrying about 50 pounds of a rhino costume on top of him.
What
I don't
was the
know. Go ahead.
biggest surprise for you? Biggest surprise of the elite races?
Oh, I think both Akiri and Legacy probably not really making an impact up front. That was a big surprise, I guess. What else? I would like, given I'd heard like Casca would have been a surprise, but I had heard the rumor about her not being injured and stuff, so I was like, well, as it turned out, it wasn't really that big a surprise. But what others? I'm just looking at the results here to see what surprised me. I think a lot of it kind of went to form, I suppose. But I would say, yeah, Legacy and Ikiri, like neither of them finishing the top four is a huge surprise, because they were the two kind of rock solid guys. You'd be like, okay, they're probably both going to be on the podium. But that men's race was a lottery. So yeah, Lemma, I mean, thought he might make the podium. Did not for a second think he would be destroying the world's best
Yeah.
besides Kipchoge. that last 5K. How about you? What took you by surprise, or what went as you thought it might go?
A lemma for sure was the biggest surprise because you look at that resume and it's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum of Jepkoska. It's like Jepkoska's resume, everything is pointing to her winning this race. The recent history and the last couple of years, the trajectory was pointing the right way. Lemma, yeah, he's had great results, but there was nothing to distinguish him from anybody else in that top group. And in fact, if you had to like divide the tiers up, you might have put people like Ikiru or Legacy in front of Lemma, and he just looked incredibly strong. In terms of Koskai, it's interesting because like she finishes fourth. She was not a factor in this race. She runs 2:18:40. And then you go and you look at the all-time list, and going into today, 2:18:40 was the 21st best marathon ever run. So it's like she still puts out like 2:18s are they don't grow on trees. Like that's an incredible performance for her, but just like within the context of the race, that's obviously going to get lost, putting even aside injury or not. So, she's been beaten 2 in a row now. So I think obviously there's going to be questions going into the next one. Now, you could also say this one is a little bit hard to compare other marathons to because she came in with such a short buildup, but I think the spring is going to be really interesting. It's with especially if Jip Chirchir wins in New York, you're going to have a case for her. Obviously, you're going to have a case for Jip Kosgei, and people I think are going to think, all right, well, Kosgei is going to try to get that you know mojo going
Mm.
again and being able
Yeah, and
to
you know
win.
what's really interesting I found is that the I only discovered this yesterday when I was doing some reading is that the London Marathon is staying in the autumn next year. I
Yeah,
didn't realize that at all. So it's missing from the spring, and but Boston Boston is also, is it or no? Is Boston
I
in the
th-
fall next year?
I think Boston's going back to the spring. I don't. I mean, she'll run something in the spring,
Sorry,
right?
you're
They'll
right.
they'll make they'll make a
Yeah,
marathon.
Yeah, it's in April. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, they'll have something, but it's just like it's a really interesting season in terms of like, does Kipchoge go to Tokyo now? Probably, perhaps. Is that February? Maybe Tokyo Marathon. Like Kipchoge
Yeah.
has said he wants to run all six majors before he retires. So like always, London will be paying him the money, but no London in April. What does
Mhm.
Elliot Kipchoge do? And he's already back training out in Kipchoge, so he's going to be doing something. But that'll be really interesting. I think probably he'll go to Tokyo, and maybe next autumn. He said he wants to run all six majors. You'll have the
Yeah.
huge cash. London will be dropping in front of him, but then the thought of Kipchoge running New York would be so cool. I think, and in terms of Nike and the sponsors and all, you just imagine what a big event for the sport that would be. Just Elliot Kipchoge bossing it through Manhattan, the marketing, everything would be so
Yes.
cool if he did come and run New York. And he has such a love affair with London. You'd have to put ridiculous money to get him back to London next October. But I don't know. It'd be interesting. Where do you think he goes next? How do you think the rest of his kind of career plays out? However many years he's got left.
I mean, I would love for him to go to the United States and run Boston and New York. I first, and I know that he said that over and over again. He wants to do all of them, but I could just see him saying, "I know what I know with London, especially with London, especially with London. Maybe not with Berlin, but
Mm.
just keep going back and doing the same thing." I mean, I have a long list of things that I would love to see Kipchoge do, and none of them involve running London or Berlin again. Now, I love watching him run regardless of where he runs, so I will obviously tune in to whatever he's doing. But I mean, I'd love to see him do a bunch of other things besides the thing that he's proven time and time again. I guess it all comes down to, do you believe he can lower his world record? Because if you believe he can lower his own world record, that's the only reason why you'd say, yeah, go do Berlin again, or even, yeah, go do
Mm.
London again. But if you're like, hey, I just want to see this guy in different circumstances, in different situations, like, yeah, New York, Boston, he's talked about like ultra running. Hell, I'd even love to see him run a fast half just to see what he could do in a half. I know
Yeah,
he's probably past his peak half performance, but I would love to see that as well too. Uh, the chat is going
yeah.
crazy, by the way.
So we're
I got some breaking news for you. Actually, this broke an hour ago, Cathal. Uh, Kalkaden Gezahenge, who was silver in the 10,000 at the Olympics. But behind Sifan Hassan, she broke the 10K road record this morning, 29:38. There you go.
Wow.
Which was Kipchoge's mark, I believe. So Kipchoge, nice consolation prize to win the London
Oops.
Marathon. Oh, see, we jinxed
We're back.
Cathal's
I think.
Wi-Fi. You're back from Greece, and he's gone again. Oh man, he almost managed again. I'm waiting here to see the
Are we
result for
live?
Flanders.
You can hear me?
Ye-
Well,
Ye- Go ahead, Cathal. Did you hear my world record breaking news?
apologies once again from the I heard about it. What? Yeah, that is hugely impressive. I suppose in terms of time, that's the story today in terms of times today. But I suppose we couldn't really look away from London. But yeah, that is a quite an astonishing performance. Yeah. What else can you say about it? I suppose I apologize by the way for my repeated dropping connection. I mean, Kevin, you spited me by saying who's going to finish stronger here, Lemma or your Wi-Fi? And
That was
clearly, you
bad.
say Lemma finished a lot stronger. But
I apologize.
yeah, here's a question: Who do you want to see? Who do you want to see run a marathon more than anyone else in the world? And it can be male or female right now in the next year or two.
Is it somebody who's not a current marathoner?
Yeah,
Oh, I lost Cathal after my follow. Any Sifan Hassan.
yeah, fair. I think Hassan and probably on the men's side, Cheptegei maybe. Two of them would be very interesting, and I'm sure there'd be big money put in front of them in a few years' time to give it a go. Hassan, you'd
Yeah,
have to
with
imagine that mark of Koskai. If there's an athlete out there who could perhaps not make Koskai's mark last like whatever 15 years that Paula Radcliffe's last or 16 years, it's probably Hassan has the goods to go after it, or maybe let Tessenbet Giddy as well. You have
yeah.
to imagine she probably has the engine to run a crazy marathon, or Yehuala, who broke the half marathon world record. I don't think she's ever run a marathon. 63
Right.
minutes for a woman at the half is just crazy. But I was talking to her manager, Dan Vandenberg, about a month ago, and he was just saying they have a plan, and I think it's next year they're going to run the debut marathon in the autumn, I think it is, and it's a nice
Mhm.
long-term plan they've had with her building up towards that point. So yeah, there's going to be a lot more, and I think that mark of Koskai, as good as it is, I think in the years ahead, we probably will see another woman running 2:14, hopefully.
So with the discussion around her triple, there was talk. I know she did an interview after where she basically said we were thinking of all sorts of crazy things. We were even considering the 800 10K, and you're like, oh, that's preposterous. But now that I'm talking about the marathon, I think the ultimate crowning achievement for Sifan Hassan would not be the 8 and the 10K, it'd be the 8 in the marathon in 2024. So I just want to plant that seed right
There we
now.
go.
If that comes to
Yeah,
fruition, it was mentioned on this show first by Cathal and myself.
I mean, I think, if the women's marathon stays with the kind of schedule they do where they have the marathon near the end, imagine like
Mhm.
her doing the Zatopek and doing the 5 and 10 at Olympics and then just running the marathon at the end of it. Because, I mean, the way she kicks, like in 3 years' time, it's hard to see anyone really, if she stays in the same form, like beating
Mhm.
her at 5 and 10,000 meters. And then you're like, maybe just give it a go. Try a marathon maybe a year out from Paris, and then
Yeah.
she wants to do something really crazy, 5, 10, and marathon. But yeah, it's probably not even doable. What am I talking about
Well, listen,
in terms of the
five and
scheduling?
10, 5:10 marathon is too traditional even for her. I think we got to extend the range. Maybe it's not 8 marathon, maybe it's 15. You have to think of the most absurd possible championship schedules for
Steeplechase and
Sifan Hassan.
marathon.
There we go.
Steeplechase and marathon. Yeah. Who's beating
I
Hassan
would
in a
love
steeplechase? Like they're lower
I would
barriers
love
for the women. They kind of step over them more than hurdle them. It's kind of
yeah.
very doable for her. She can't take them in her stride.
Yeah, I would love to see her in a steeple as well too. Someone in the chat mentioned wanting to see Jacob Kiplimo in a marathon as well.
Yeah, he's another, and I picked him to win the 10K in Tokyo and got it wrong. I really thought he was gonna take that race, but he didn't. But yeah, he won the World Half Marathon last year, and when you see him moving on the roads, he's so smooth. It's like unfair how efficient and smooth he is when he moves. And I don't know if it's a or if it's a urban legend or not, but they always say the shorter athletes tend to be better at the marathon because of the same thing about I was on about earlier, the thermoregulation to keep your body temperature
Thermoregulation.
down. It's a big word. I don't really know what it means. No, but I think to keep your body temperature down, it's slightly easier if you're a shorter athlete. They say, like in ultra marathon running world, like a lot of times they say it's why you don't see too many athletes like Vincent Kipchumba today. Obviously, a lot of them are there and they're
Yeah.
present, but they tend to say those shorter athletes who are kind of low to the ground, and it's easier to kind of keep your body temperature under control. And you think with Jacob Kiplimo, and even the way he runs, he's so efficient, and he doesn't really bounce off the track. It's just that kind of
Yeah.
marathoner's efficient stride. Um, I think he could do real damage at the marathon if he continues his progression. But I mean, all these guys on the track, you're kind of like, what's the rush? You're kind of crushing it on
Yeah.
the track as it is at 3K, 5K, 10K. You may as well enjoy your time at that until Paris, and then maybe go after. Or we're definitely seeing people go
Safan
earlier
has
these days.
Well, Safan Hassan would be the, I think, exception both on the men's and the women's side, just because she's running out of things to do, and I could see her just doing it just as the next challenge. I guess you could you go back again, try to beat Faith Kipyegon, which is tough, but winning the winning the 5 and 10 and then getting bronze in the 15 when the schedule was okay for you, but it wasn't optimal for her in Tokyo, right?
Mm,
Like they could have the schedule if someone was planning it and say, "Hey, we want to make this triple really, really doable. This is how we'll do it." They could have done it in a different way to make it even better. Now, I happen to think even if she was fresh, Kipyegon was better than her because she's the
same.
greatest women's miler of all time. So, and maybe she's like, "Hey, I'm just that's a challenge that I've taken my best shot at her. She's just better than me. I'm gonna do crazier stuff." But she's run 64 for a half, 65 for a half, Safan Hassan, right? And she's run 156 for an
Hmm.
8. Like she's checked off a lot of boxes. I think she's crazy to just like move up to the marathon or to at least try it, maybe in a non-championship year. See how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. I know it'll be interesting. But the only thing is with Hassan, you're kind of thinking like, much like Mo Farah. Do you know the way Mo Farah ran 3:28 for the 1500? And I was kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
he is a fast twitch engine, in the purest
Yeah.
sense as well. Even though he's a 5K specialist, Hassan is so good. Like her last 100 and what was it, 13 seconds in the 10K in
Yeah.
Tokyo or something absurd, and she is so fast at 8 and 15 that you kind of wonder like that biological trade-off has to happen somewhere between fast twitch and slow twitch,
Yeah.
whereby maybe she's just getting away with it at half marathon, and we'll probably only know once she does actually try it. But in terms of the fuel, the way, what's it called, the running economy, and the way your system
Hmm.
utilizes fuel and stuff, I would suspect maybe that a lot of those purebred 1500 runners, 15 5K types like Hassan, like Farah, when you eventually go up to the marathon and your body hits 20 miles, it's like, oh no, this is something my engine was not ready for or not made for. So
Yeah.
you never know with Hassan. Maybe she could crush everyone and be absolutely coasting up to 20 miles on world record pace, but maybe because she's so full of power and so full of speed that the opposite is kind of that might actually work against her at the marathon. And I think that's probably the main reason we never saw Farah run like a 203 like so many others,
Hmm.
despite destroying all those other 203 athletes at 5 and 10K.
Yeah, that's a great point. My counterpoint would only be Safan Hassan. That's it. That's the
Two
right.
words, you just ended the
She,
argument, Kevin, and I will hand victory to
she
you.
I mean 65, 15 and a half. No, I think the main reason you'd see her try because I agree with you, right? Eventually the skill set because like the thing that's not even it's not even about like what makes her good at 5 and 10 or what makes her good kick. Like she obviously has this insane ability at all these different events, right? But there is a breaking point to that. And maybe you're right. Maybe that would make her a worse marathoner than Gaudet, for example, just because
Mm.
she's able to dip down so low. So I think
They
boredom
could
would be
make
the
a
best
documentary about it.
way.
revenge of
Yeah.
G'day, you know, all those times she gets out kicked on the
Yeah.
track and all the times Susan was just coasting behind her. And then at 22
Yeah.
miles
Yeah.
in the New York Marathon, G'day is just smiling and going, haha, your tank is empty. At
Yes.
last, I get my revenge.
She seems like she'll be a good marathoner. Good day, that is. So I'm waiting on, oh, Flanagan is through 235, 235.04. So according to this,
Nice.
she
Quicker.
was on, yeah, 230 pace and then slowed over the last 2K, but I'm not sure how accurate those splits are in terms of projected finish. But yeah, bottom line here, 235.04. So she's dropping time. Berlin's fast course too. And she went faster in London, well under her
Mm.
target of 3 hours, we could say.
That is very impressive. If she drops a minute every marathon, that would be super cool, but it's probably
There
unfeasible. 234 next
there
time,
we go.
233, and then what? 231, 230 in New York. A 229 to finish
Yeah,
in New York. How epic would that be when she's fresh and
really open it
tapered?
up. Really open
Yeah.
it up there. Yeah. All right. Well, bottom line here, we saw the deepest women's marathon in history. We saw Cisse Lemma get the performance of his career. This was fun. Cathal, we're gonna wrap it up here. Let you get about your day out there in the birthplace of the marathon in Greece. I don't know what I'm gonna do because I've now been up for 4 hours. I don't know if I'm gonna fall back asleep, but
More coffee, Kevin. More coffee.
more coffee. All right. Thank you so much to Cathal
It's been
Dennehy
a
for
pleasure.
joining me, and our producer Colt for getting up early as well. Gordon and I will be back next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, regular time, thankfully, 9 a.m. Central, live here on the FloTrack Podcast YouTube channel. You can subscribe there. See you guys. Have a great Sunday.